I know we've been talking about it for the last couple hours. I want to start by reading it again for those of you that have been under a rock or just getting to a radio for the first time here today. There's a lot to react to. I want Jim to do it. Then we'll bring Derek in from NBC7. So this from Peter Seidler at 8 a.m. has created all kinds of questions and ambiguity. He said we entered 2023 with expectations that we would build on last year's NLCS appearance and contend for a World Series. We fell short of that goal. The Padres organization will learn from the season and emerge in 2024 with the pieces in place to compete for San Diego's first World Series title. Our current leadership team continues to have my full support, and I've asked them to perform a thorough assessment of our organization beginning today. We will make the changes necessary to play championship caliber baseball for our extraordinary fans in 2024. Whoa. Honestly, Jim, the last thing I was expecting was a statement that didn't state anything.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like we got earlier today from Peter Seidler. What was your reaction to this when you read this morning? And I noticed you were up very early, by the way.
I was up very early. I definitely had a lot of PTSD from the past with Padres moves. I've missed the Manny Machado signing, the Yu Darvish signing. There were other things that have happened early in the morning with the Padres, and I was up waiting. And I did not expect this. The second I saw in my, email, because I got an email statement, I'm sure we all did. Without reading it, I thought, okay, they're announcing they're all coming back. That's what I thought. And then I read it, and I was even more confused after it. And then the last line of it says that changes are expected to be coming. So my thing with the Padres right now is I expect changes. I expect changes with this team. I do. I expect to have some type of change with the Padres because that's what it said in the statement. I don't mean like little changes. I don't mean like things that we like personnel in your scouting department, whatever the case may be. I mean like significant changes.
All right. Derek Togerson, NBC7 is with us. This is Sports Wrap. You can watch it back on the NBC7 Roku channel tonight at 9 p.m. Derek, what was your reaction and what are your takeaways when you read something like this earlier today?
My reaction was, okay, AJ is coming back because that's part of the leadership structure. Eric Grupner is coming back, part of the leadership structure. What I don't know is, does that mean Bob Melvin is coming back? Is he part of your leadership structure? Because AJ is part of, he leads the front office. Eric leads the marketing and financial aspect. Bob Melvin leads your on-air or your on-field product. Does that mean he's part of that? And I don't think it does. Also, what I want to know is, we were talking about organizational evaluation. How far down in the organization are we talking? Because we could even make the case that, yes, a lot of these guys who have come up, these youngsters haven't been ready to play. AAA this year with El Paso didn't provide a whole lot of assistance. You got some studs in your Ethan Solaces of the world and Jackson Merrills, but they're AA right now. Are we talking about going all the way down to the studs in the Dominican Winter League to try and say, we're overhauling the way that we do our player development? How far down does we're making changes for an organizational analysis actually go? What does it really mean? Because that's an incredibly vague way of saying we're looking at how we do things. Is it just the big league level? Is it all the way down to the bottom of it? Is it how people go about their interpersonal communications? Is it AJ and Bob get in the same room? You're adults. We got to figure this thing out because there's no way you guys can hate each other to the point that you cannot coexist.
Someone answer this to me, and that's an interesting way to look at it. Answer this to me. How can you put in a statement that we're going to learn from this and we're going to contend for a World Series next year, but you're going to lower your payroll? And from this statement, who knows, Jim, if there's even any change coming? It's possible. It's also possible that there is no real change at the top of the leadership structure with AJ Preller and or Bob Melvin. So how do you go from this? Lower your payroll $50 million. It's not just Kevin Acee saying that, by the way. The Athletic has reported that as well. Mm-hmm. And you're going to come out on the other side, and you're not just going to be better. You're going to be in a position to win a World Series in 2024. Do you buy that? When I read that, I don't buy it. What I watched this year doesn't lead me to believe that you can trim the fat and all of a sudden be contending for a World Series in 2024.
What else do you want him to say, though? Like, do you want him to say,
Well, why
yeah,
put
we're
out the
trimming
statement?
payroll, so we're not going to compete for a World Series next year?
But
And
why put this out?
that's what I'm asking.
Right?
I think that's what
Is
we're all
that-
asking here. I think we're all asking, if this statement came out, why are we having more questions than answers?
Right.
Why
Because you
are
have
we?
to do something.
Well, do you?
Monday morning at 8 a.m.? I mean, is this
Yeah,
doing
because otherwise
something?
you're just going to be saying, when's it coming? What are you doing? You said you're going to have a meeting. You got to tell us something. It's a preemptive strike to get rid of all the speculation. What they didn't realize, I think, is the way they worded it is actually causing more speculation.
And that's where I feel. That's where my sentiment is, Derek. Is there is more questions than answers after this statement. I do agree. Like, having to say something needed to happen fairly quickly after this season. You cannot let this thing fester for too long, especially
Yes.
because the postseason starts tomorrow. I don't know if they really do much on postseason days, and when the season's over with. The next off day is a Friday. This Friday, could the fan base wait for that long for any type of communication to the fan base about this season? Personally, I don't think so. So you're right, Derek. They needed to say something, but it's like what they said, and it wasn't it's Peter. It's what Peter said, the owner of the team, coming out today and saying things that you're reading it to yourself and go, okay, what are you saying? Are you saying you're making changes? Are you saying you're bringing everybody back? What are you saying? Who are you talking about? Who are you talking about as far as the structure of this team goes? Are you talking about AJ? Are you talking about Eric? Are you talking about both of them? Are you including Bob Melvin in this? There's a lot more questions after this statement that came out kind of abruptly at 8 a.m. And I think to a surprise of many, maybe in that organization and in the media, that has created more questions than answers.
Let me ask you this, Derek, and 844-570-1360 if you want to weigh in. We're going to get to your calls and your text, 70470. Start your message with team. That's TEAM. What should they do off this year? Not to say what would all other 29 teams do. They're all unique to some extent. It's not like there's only one possible outcome with what's transpired here. But Derek, in your opinion, forget about the statement for a second. Based on what happened this year, what are the steps that are necessary for the Padres moving forward?
Make a change at general manager, hold on to your on-field manager, and find a way to fill in the gaps. You've got all these all-stars. You got a really good core of players who are going to be around for a while. But I think what we saw in September is the fatal flaw that we saw the vast majority of the season is the roster construction doesn't work because, as we know, chemistry is real, right? So you try to extend, we talked about this with Darren just a little bit ago. How do you lose Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Jake Cronenworth, Gary Sanchez, and then have a severely limited Manny Machado? You add Matthew Batten and Jurickson Profar and Matt Waldron, and you go 20-7. You lose a whole bunch of talent. Oh, by the way, they lost Ha-Sung Kim for a while in there too, who had the abdominal issue, and they still continued to win because they had guys who are more of those, glue guys, the guys who round out a roster and make it complete. So the question you guys ask is, how do you drop the payroll down to $200 million and still compete? The Atlanta Braves payroll this year is $200 million. But the way that Alex Anthopoulos builds a roster is he looks at how the pieces fit together, not just what the pieces are on a talent perspective. So you can put together a $200 million, a 105-win team that can legitimately win a World Series as long as you find the right guys to supplement around your high-priced superstars. And that is where AJ Preller has failed time and time again to find those types of players and bring them in consistently. So that's what needs to happen. To somebody who understands the collective, maybe the people part of it a little bit better, you can drop that payroll down and you can bring in guys who really fit the clubhouse dynamic instead of just being another mega high-priced superstar.
After 2021, I think we all agreed here that after that season, before they hired Bob, it was, okay, this cannot happen again. This type of season with this type of turmoil, with this type of dysfunction cannot happen again. And it pretty much happened again, just a year later. So I am with you, Derek, because of that and because of the overall resume of AJ Preller. It is time to make a change. I don't know, and I've said this a lot, I don't know if whoever they would bring in to be the new president of baseball operations or the general manager or both would be better than AJ. But what I do know is that right now, AJ is not getting it done. He has created a culture here that creates articles out of The Athletic every other year to where it is constantly anybody that wants to talk about this organization and AJ Preller is very happy to do so, and not in a good light either.
And they sound very similar too, don't they?
Very similar. The 2021 season, and even kind of a little bit at end of 2019 as well. Maybe not to a big extent as this year in 2021, but you started seeing some festering of things happening after 2019. And then obviously the pandemic happened, and we all know that situation with Jace Tingler. But for every other year with this team from 2019 to now, it's been an issue. And we've talked a lot about culture on this show. And we've talked a lot about Manny Machado not really voicing his expectations for culture and how important it is to him. The culture starts with the top, and it starts with AJ Preller, and it's not a good culture right now. So for all those reasons, like, there has to be a change. And if there's not a change and they bring them both back, oh boy. Oh boy.
Here's what I would say. I agree with both of you. I would make the change. And as we kind of bring it back full circle, I'm saying, what would Derek do? What would Jim do? What would Jon do? What would you guys do? 70470. Start it with team. But it's hard for me to get past this line in this statement of our current leadership team continues to have my full support.
Who is that, though?
I mean, how can it not? And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not guaranteeing that it is. I didn't write this statement. But how can it not include AJ Preller, who you've elevated during his time with the organization to vice president of baseball operations? We've known this to be true. I read Kevin's article July 1st or June 30th. AJ, of course, reports directly to Peter Seidler. He's in charge of baseball operations. Peter, July 1st, said, I trust my two leaders, basically, that are in the day-to-day operations, AJ Preller and Eric Rupner. So, again, maybe
the context
he didn't say
clues lead you to believe who it is.
it's like he didn't say their names, and that's a fair point. I think it's led to all the speculation. I think it's a very fair point. Why didn't he just say AJ Preller and Eric Rupner? But how can your leadership team, and correct me if I'm wrong, how can your leadership team not include your vice president of baseball operations, the highest position that oversees baseball activity and reports directly to Peter Seidler? Wouldn't that be somewhat odd if he was trying to say something else about his leadership team and not include AJ Preller?
Well, look at what they did just a couple of years ago. Who are the two guys that got the long contract extensions at the exact same time? It was AJ and it was Eric. That's the leadership structure. That is now what we know they're in it. What we don't know is how far down below that it does go. Right. That's really the only thing we don't know about it. The two things I can more or less guarantee you are those are the two guys who were involved in this who have the full support still.
I just go back to...
Do you agree with that? Do you agree that when he says leadership team, I mean, could you possibly be referring to someone other than AJ Preller?
It's hard to think that he's not.
Unless
is it Tom Seidler?
Ambiguous.
Who else? Is it Ron Fowler? Who else could you put in that situation?
Team he's talking about?
Right. No, it's hard to think that he's not talking and grouping Preller.
It seems like
that group, especially after the comments that he and the glowing endorsement that was given to AJ just earlier this season in the midst of, I think, like a 5-game losing streak.
And Kevin's article last week that said he believes Seidler prefers to keep both Preller and Melvin intact.
So I don't know. If here's the thing is what the more that we're talking about it, the more of everybody's going to have their own opinion on such a vague type of statement to end the season. Like, you could get 10 people in a room, and I bet you 10 different people would have a different opinion.
I agree
on what they read today from Peter Seidler. And
most of them would be defensible. Like,
they would.
You're going to be able to say, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Right. Exactly. Because you're like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. There's not really any that you're like, oh, that doesn't make sense. And that's
right. You could spin it either way. Yeah. If AJ's let go, be like, oh, interesting. He wasn't referring to Preller in his leadership team, and these are the changes he was referencing.
Right. Oh, and he mentioned changes. So so now I to believe, if you're a Padres fan, like, they're going to make changes because he mentioned it in his release. But then you can also say, well, they're not making changes because he said he had the full support of his leadership team. So again, like, everybody should love what Peter Seidler has done as an owner for this Padres team over the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years, where he has brought this team to relevancy. He's opened the checkbook, something that you have never seen here if you're a Padres fan. But with that being said, it can't just be that. It has to be like, okay, you're moving in the right direction. You're making the right decisions. You're making the right choices. And the longer this goes on with dysfunction every other year, with AJ still in charge, with a manager carousel that this team has had, with coaches in and out of this organization, players underperforming, the development of young talent not performing at the big league level, at what point is enough enough? And if it's not now, then I'm sorry, but Peter, you're becoming part of the problem here.
Can I ask
Jim,
this
you
as
brought
well?
up- Go ahead.
I was going to say, can I ask this? And I agree with everything Jim said. I think he's spot on. The more he's made this argument over the last 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks, because it's been trending this way this season for a long, long time. The more he makes that argument, the more compelling it becomes to me. Here's my question about Bob Melvin. What do you think his preference would be based on everything that we know? Would he like to return, conclude this contract, have a chance to win with a star-laden group? He's received, glowing reviews from even players at the end of the season, like Xander Bogaerts, I think was quoted yesterday, glowingly on the job Bob Melvin did. Do you think he'd like to see this thing out? Or is there such a rift that he'd prefer to just end this and maybe head elsewhere? Like, if you're in Bob Melvin's shoes, what do you think his preference is moving forward here?
Honestly, that I don't know. Before I answer that, I will say, John, you brought up a really good point about 19 and 21. The end of those 2 seasons, Andy Green was fired because of a collapse. Then Jace Tingler was fired because of a collapse. This team never collapsed. In fact, they went 20-7 in September. If anything, Bob Melvin is the reason that they didn't have that kind of 65-win season. He was able to somehow hold it together down the stretch and keep the team from going completely off the rails, which tells you how good a manager he truly is. Now, John, to answer your question, I honestly don't know, because I do know that Bob Melvin is a Bay Area guy. I mean, we're talking about the Giants here, obviously. He's a Bay Area guy who went to Cal, who played several years as a catcher for the Giants organization, who obviously was very successful in Oakland. That's got to be alluring. But at the same time, he's a competitor. And no competitor wants to say, you know what? I'm walking away from something that I couldn't be successful with. I want to, the competitor and the professional in him, and I'm sure is dying to try and say, I need to show people that I can fix this, that I can take a massive payroll and I can win with it. So he's probably torn right down the middle on this. Now, if he is let go, will he have options? Hell yes, he'll have options. There is no question he will have multiple options. And the Padres just might find themselves in another Bruce Bochy situation when you got a guy who leaves and goes to San Francisco and starts winning and shoving it in your face every year. But man, it's going to depend on what he truly values and what he wants to have with his personal life. You know, he's only missing a World Series with his professional resume. He wins 1 World Series, Bob Melvin's in the Hall of Fame. I don't think anybody would argue against that. But man, it's tough. It's tough to deal with a situation like this because you want to see it through. But if you see the writing on the wall where you don't believe you're in a situation where you can see it through, maybe you just want to go, guys, send me away, fire me, whatever, no skin off my nose. Let's just go and try and figure this out somewhere else.
And I think you could also argue Bob Melvin did change things here. He did turn things around.
The only 2 times AJ Preller in a full season's had a winning record are the 2 times Bob Melvin was his manager.
Right. He did take a dysfunction after the 2021 season, and it was a dysfunction. I mean, some could argue that's actually maybe worse than 2023. He took that and he parlayed that into an NLCS run. Amidst, I'm sure, also problems last year as well with him and AJ. And, you know, while I view September differently this year than most, while I view it as not really meaningful at all, and
I agree with that.
You're playing AAA teams for the last 2 weeks of the season.
And you won a series against the Dodgers.
You do. I agree.
In LA.
And I've said this too. Like, I will give credit to this team for not completely just absolutely quitting like they have done in the past. So I give them credit for that, but I don't go too far into, you know, looking in too much into it. But yeah, it is a thing. Hey, Bob has taken this team to an NLCS. He has given AJ another winning record under his belt, the only 2 in his career.
But
here.
you and I agree that there's semantics in this second one.
It's semantics. It's semantics.
Pure, I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
it is.
And I agree with you, Derek. I agree. I think he gets credit for this thing not going in the tank like he promised it wouldn't, and I give him credit for that. The fact that they happen to go 14-2 down the stretch, it means nothing for 2024. The Tigers had the best record in the American League in September. Do we think they're in the World Series next year? I don't. So I think you have to take all this with a grain of salt.
But the Tigers and the Padres are completely different situations.
Yeah, but you can't tell me that what they did in September matters in April of next
yes,
year.
I can. It does matter.
You can, but I would disagree
What
with
did they not do to miss the playoffs this year? They didn't beat the teams they're supposed to beat. Now they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat.
Well, why were they good in the postseason last year and bad in the start of 2023?
The Padres?
Yeah. Where was the momentum? Where was the momentum for beating the Dodgers and the Mets?
You can't take a momentum over 4 or 5 months.
That's what I'm saying. So why would we take anything away from September?
Because it shows you exactly what kind of I said this a second ago. It shows you what kind of roster you have to have. It shows you the mistakes that you made when you put this thing together in the offseason. It shows you what kind of players you have to bring in for next year. September is the blueprint to show you how you win next year.
Matt Batten and Eggy Rosario, and all of a sudden you're going to win 95 games? Derek,
damn right, Eggy Rosario. He's the difference maker. He's going to be Rookie of the Year next year.
I want 26 Matthew Battens on this team next year.
Yes,
Derek,
precisely. That's a little extreme.
For our listeners, where can they find Sports Wrap here tonight?
Oh, God.
NBC7
on the Roku
channel.
channel. Yes, the NBC7 Roku channel starting at 9 o'clock. I forget if it's called Roku or Amazon Fire or whatever one. Yes, check out the Roku channel. They call it like the streaming channel that you find on NBC7. Check it out. You can see all of our beautiful smiling faces. You can see John's very loud but cool hat.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Derek enjoyed it. Great perspective. We'll do it again soon. Thank you for hopping on.
See y'all.
On the other side, Padres fans, we want to hear from you. 844-570-1360. 844-570-1360. You read the statement. What do you want to happen now? Your reaction next. It's Jon and Jim. All right, Padres fans, what do you want to see happen? You've read the statement. What changes would you like to see? We'd love to hear from you. 844-570-1360 or text us 70470. Start your message with the word team. That's next.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. Padres season is officially over. It finished with a winning record, 82-80, but they missed out on the postseason. Now we wait to see if any changes will be made with this franchise. As Peter Seidler released a statement this morning saying that he has full support of his staff, but also changes will be made. Moving over to the Aztecs this past weekend. Not a good game for the Aztecs. They got blown out by Air Force 49-10. They've now lost 4 straight games in a row. And tonight, the final game of week 4 in the NFL as the Giants take on the Seahawks for Monday Night Football. And this update's been brought to you by Staples.
All right, Annie Halbrin from the UT. She will swing by at 5 p.m., provide her thoughts and perspective on today's statement from Peter Seidler. Again, we'd love to hear from you. What do you want to see happen? 844-570-1360, 70470. Start your message with team. Again, 844-570-1360 or 70470. Start your message with team. I mean, you read it and you read it. It's not a long statement, and I've read it and I've read it, and I've had multiple thoughts on it. I heard Darren talk about it earlier, and I agree with what he was saying earlier, that you really don't know. And you could go down multiple paths on it. My take differed from Darren's, but I agree with everything that he was saying, which is it's ambiguous. And you didn't need to release it unless you had something to say. My takeaway initially, and I took to Twitter, said, to me, it sounds like AJ's safe, and who knows on Bob Melvin, but you could read it any which way you really want to read it, is my overall takeaway. And I'm with you, Jim. You need to say something. But when you say something, you don't just say something to say something, like have something to report. They literally reported nothing and created more ambiguity today.
Yeah. And because this is the only thing that we have like on record.
That's it.
The more you read it, the more I pick it apart.
Yeah, I agree with you.
The more I'm going to pick apart every single sentence, I feel like. Just because until we get something concrete, what else do we have to do? This is what we're going to do.
I agree with you.
I said this last week. The second the season ends, there better be something of how disappointing this thing was. How
Yeah, did they use the D word?
they did not.
They didn't use the D word in there.
And when you say they, it's not they, it's one person.
Okay.
It's Peter Seidler. Like, Peter put his name on this thing. This is not
Right.
from the Padres organization. This is from Peter Seidler himself.
Okay.
There is not one disappointing or anything in there.
Does that not surprise you? Now that we like break that down, that surprises me.
Yeah.
Because now they're spinning the same thing. Hey, we had a nice September.
We fell short of our goal.
Yeah, no. You fell well short of your goal. You didn't even get into the tournament, right? Like you didn't even have a chance.
No. So again, the more I read it, the more upset I get with it, and the more I'm putting blame on Peter Seidler. Like I just
right. It's not AJ Preller's fault that there's ambiguity here. It's not Bob Melvin's fault.
And AJ's not released any statement.
Can he?
He could, absolutely could.
But he works for the organization.
But he's the president of baseball operations. Like when the Giants, they just fired their manager. Is the owner talking about it, or is Farhan talking about it?
Mm-hmm.
When the Dodgers miss out, is whoever the majority owner of the Dodgers releasing statements, or is it Andrew Freeman?
Right.
When I see
what you're saying. It would have been nice. I agree with that. It would have been nice to have a statement here from Peter Seidler coupled with a statement from AJ Preller. Now that's if he's staying.
But that's the thing is, would AJ release a statement? If he did, that to me tells me he's returning. So
correct.
Now there's even more here speculating like, well, if you're not getting any statement from AJ on this, and AJ has not spoken or talked at all since the Padres got eliminated last Friday. Unless I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
Unless he has talked to somebody,
no,
unless there's
right.
quotes out there from him, he has not spoken since they got eliminated. That's another thing that I find interesting as well, is the second you get eliminated, the next day there's nothing from the organization. Well,
there kind of is, but it's not saying anything.
Man, I look at this whole thing here as what it's being portrayed as that it's a mess.
Also, why would you? Okay, let me ask you this, Jim. As we parse through it, why would this team that fell short of your goals assess what's wrong with the organization? Why would you take this group? Why would you say, hey, AJ, what went wrong? Can you assess? Can you do an assessment on what went wrong? Well, maybe what went wrong is what you did with this team in 2023, the way you put this roster together. Why would AJ Preller, coming off a disappointing season, be the one to take a look under the hood? I mean, does that make any sense? Shouldn't it be someone like from the outside potentially to take a look under the hood to see what went wrong? What's AJ's assessment going to be if he's back? He's obviously going to paint a glowing light on himself for the organization. He's not going to be like, oh my gosh, I failed miserably. That's my critical assessment. You should get rid of me. That's not his takeaway. His takeaway is going to be, this is where we can get better in 2024, and here's why. Trust me.
It is funny how you get a statement from Peter this morning at 8
a.m.
Exactly 8 a.m. To me,
that was scheduled.
To me, that feels like it was a scheduled tweet.
So they knew Sunday night that was going out.
That's a scheduled tweet. Then the very next tweet from the Padres is, guys, the Lynx is returning to Petco Park.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Which was fun, by the way.
It was fun.
Yeah, we did it last year.
Super fun. Followed by Foo Fighters, Petco Park next year.
Great concert. That'll be awesome.
Sorry.
This year?
Whatever. But who cares?
Yep.
But it's like, guys,
maybe today we can maybe we do the links tomorrow.
Yeah, the reading of the room is not great with this organization at a lot of times of when the fans are not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really going to set in even more the longer time passes without a decision made, and the postseason starting tomorrow with the Padres not in it, and more articles probably being released about how disappointing the season was. And, all the players are, I'm sure, gone and off to their wherever they're off to. Like, they're not going to be heard from for a long time. So you have fans now sitting and waiting. And that's after what the fans endured this year with as many that went to the ballpark as they did, as did, creating the largest fan, as far as gate goes in Padres history. Over 3.2 million fans showed up this year at Petco Park to watch this team. The least you could do is have a decision pretty quickly here, Because if you just all of a sudden started Sunday night to assess the problems and to have meetings and talk, that's also another red flag for me. You should have been doing this thing all season long. And if you haven't, then shame on you.
And also, you were 11 games under 500 in September. Like, you could have been doing this review the entire. I mean, you could have done it in August, to be honest, because they were so bad.
But they had false hope that was just annoying to listen to all the time. And because of that, I guarantee you was the reason why they didn't potentially start this in-depth discussion of what needs to change.
Here's what I know. Nothing will change today. You do not issue this at 8 a.m. on Monday to issue another statement. Why on earth would you do that? I also know the postseason starts tomorrow. The next scheduled off day in the postseason is Friday. I don't believe anything changes today. When I read in the statement, we'll begin our assessment today. Okay, beginning today. So you don't begin at 8 a.m. and be like, oh, Bob Melvin's out. We determined that. How did you determine that if you said you were going to begin it today?
Another part of this statement from Peter that you can nitpick and dissect, because this is all we have. The assessment just started today. Today? Have you not been watching this team play? Have you not, like, is the dysfunction in this organization something that you just completely turn a blind eye to? Because that's what it's being now viewed as, is Peter Seidler is turning a blind eye to the main root cause of the problems with the Padres, and that's AJ Preller.
And you got to ask, like, why? You know, he's the third most tenured general manager in the sport. He has no rings. He's coming off an overly disappointing season. He spent more money than any GM in the history of this franchise has spent on a roster, and it didn't work. So if he can't do it with that payroll and with this team, you trust he can do it next year with a lower payroll coming off this year? I mean, answer that.
It's sad. It's sad that they don't know how to all get on the same page, it feels like. And it's sad that you have this much money invested into this franchise and people are allowed to continue to fail after time, after time, after time with no consequence. How can you have this type of season and no consequence? How can you have this season and run it back?
And if the whole September thing really bothers me, it just they went 20 here. Two things can be true. They went 20 in September, 20-7 in September, the best record in franchise history. You want to know why? Because they were completely out of it, and it was completely meaningless, including their series win at Dodger Stadium. They were 4-9 against the Dodgers. Don't sell me on a Dodger Stadium series win when the Dodgers are 25 games better than you and have literally nothing to play for again in September.
Actually, John, they went 19-7 in September.
Oh, 1-0.
You know what? They did get to October baseball.
They're undefeated. They'll have the best record in baseball.
In October baseball. Congratulations. They made it to October, everybody. The Padres have made it to October baseball with their win yesterday against the hopeless, pathetic AAA ball club, which is the Chicago White Sox. And they had to do that in extra innings with 47-year-old Rich Hill on the mound.
All right, on the other side, is that good? The best and worst of the sports weekend still ahead. Annie Halbrin from the UT with her perspective on the Padres heading into the offseason. We've got tickets to give away to see, is it Avenged Sevenfold? Avenged Sevenfold. That's Saturday night at the North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. Be listening for your chance to win those tickets in the 4 o'clock hour. The best and worst of the sports weekend comes up next on Jon and Jim. Hey guys, it is Schaefer. I've been telling you now for weeks and weeks about Windmill Farms, the college area's natural grocer. This is your place to pick up your lunch during your work week. It's also the place to get all of your game day needs for the weekends with football here, the NFL and college. They've got you covered for all your needs, featuring organic farm fresh produce and meats, an amazing craft beer selection we've been telling you about. They also have this full deli with award-winning sandwiches. And they've been telling me that they do everything in their power to keep the prices low by using the freshest, best ingredients possible. With a sandwich card, your 8th sandwich is free. So pick up your lunches over at Windmill Farms. They're located centrally off Del Cerro Boulevard, right across the freeway from Montezuma Mesa. Windmill Farms is family owned, and they've been family owned for more than 20 years. You can always visit windmillfarmsmarket.com because you can see their weekly specials there. So check them out at windmillfarmsmarket.com. You can also check them out on Instacart. Have your groceries delivered to your doorstep. Simple and easy. Shop local. Shop at Windmill Farms.
Hold on. Oh, no.
All right, guys. Let's get to some super chats here.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Greenfin Tuna, he has 2 here. He says, I want a new strategic system in place. Padres need to get smarter than everyone else and find/invent a new system that will systematically generate major competitive advantages when staffed correctly. Preller could find ideal talent, just need that new system. There is a less than 0% chance that AJ Preller would just remain as like a talent scout for this organization if they went out and found a new GM. 0.0%. And I do agree they need to find a new system, but that system has to be without AJ Preller.
Well, here's the thing on systems. It's an interesting point. I agree with you. I don't think anything really changes with Preller. Like you're hearing now about teams like Baltimore and what they're doing to get it. You're hearing about Kipshu Miami, and they're sending everything out of the information that they're receiving in Miami. AJ Preller's been in place for 9+ years, and they've never been at the forefront in that area, right? They're not at the forefront analytically. They're not at the forefront with their systems, clearly. They're not Atlanta. They're not the Dodgers. They're not Tampa Bay. So to your point, nothing changes if nothing changes.
Nothing will change. Thanks for the super. JD Gaucho, thanks for the super. 2 cents on Bauer. Does this news change anything? I have less than 2 cents on Bauer. I have 0 cents on Bauer. I could give 2 shits.
Just because Trevor Bauer comes to his own defense in a 4-minute video, he'll never pitch again in the big leagues. Of course he's going to defend himself.
Yeah.
It's over. It's done with. It's been dealt with. He's been suspended. He's pitched overseas. He's not pitching in the big leagues. I don't care what he's saying. Correct?
I saw it this morning and I just scrolled past it. I could care less. Yeah. But thanks for the super, JD. All right.
We'll get to every super at our breaks. Thank you for your support. Like, subscribe. Yeah.
I think the saying is staying the same is falling behind. It's Black Monday. Other teams are making moves. The Padres to this point have not. Phil Nevin will not return as Angels manager. His contract has expired after 2 seasons. Angels have made their move. Shoot, the Mets GM has already started. Their new GM that they hired from Milwaukee, David Stearns, has already started. So the changes are underway around baseball in most places that have had disappointing seasons, but not yet in San Diego.
Again, what are we? I don't want to say what are we waiting for, but like, guys, we're waiting.
We might be waiting a while.
If you think that this statement this morning from Peter is going to like,
oh, we're good,
temper things over for the time being until whatever decision they make is going to be officially announced, give me a break. Give me a break. You should have known by now. That's the problem. Is you should have been discussing this. You should have been talking about this. And maybe there's the wrench in this whole thing is, the health of Peter Seidler, which again is the number one thing for Peter. I think at this time, Padres have to be number 2 on his list of concerns. Like, he has to focus on his health first and foremost. And maybe that is a part of this, why there has not been a decision completely made yet, and why they are just now, according to Peter, like now assessing things. But with that being said, it does feel like Peter is still involved, and Peter's releasing statements, and he is giving his opinion on what he prefers. So it's, while his health is the number one concern, it's not like he's not making any decisions, or not like he's not involved in any decisions going on here, because the dude is the owner still of the team.
I think it's a classic example, too, of like, you made such a strong statement the last time you were publicly quoted to the UT on AJ Preller and Eric Grupner, that doing the about face immediately may be challenging to do. And maybe with time, you'll be willing to consider it based on your assessment of the organization. But the last time we heard from Peter, he said AJ Preller is excellence. 3 months later, he's out of a job. That would be quite an about face and quite a 180. So we'll see what happens in the days ahead. But I wouldn't expect news. I mean, if we haven't heard anything today other than the statement and the playoffs start tomorrow, I wouldn't expect anything in the coming minutes, hours, even days.
I mean, actions speak so much more louder than words. And I'm sick and tired of these words that don't even really make sense. Can we get some action here?
We want some action.
We do.
All right, let's get to it.
Stupid words.
Words. They're the worst. All right, what do you got? Is that good? What do you got for your first one here today?
Brock Purdy, pretty good over the weekend. He was pretty good.
Ooh, I like what you did there.
As far I'm using his, I'm just saying his name because Marty and Florio are the only 2 people in the world that think Brock Purdy can't be a good quarterback because he has a weird name. Give me a break. He went 20 for 21 yesterday. He set a franchise record for completion percentage in an entire game, passing Steve Young. So, yeah, Brian, is that good?
It is good.
I mean, it's not like they're playing Philadelphia in the NFC Championship. It's like the Arizona AAA team.
At least he won the game. Justin Fields only missed 1 pass in the first half.
I know Arizona beat Dallas last week. I know they've been good on the road.
What are we talking about here? They've had a lead in every single game at halftime except for this one for the Cardinals.
Great. And the Padres lost a lot of 1-run games. I'm kidding.
Okay.
All right. I'll give you one.
Foreshadowing.
I'll give you one. We talked about it earlier with Derek. How about the Padres finish, folks?
Oh, jeez.
20-7 in September. It's the best finish to a regular season in franchise history. Their best ever record from September 1st on, with the caveat of, well, they went 82-80 and missed out in the postseason after going to the NLCS last year.
It didn't matter.
So with us knowing all of that, is that good? It's
a mix.
both.
It's a mix.
It's a mask.
It's a mask. Juan Soto this year finished playing 162 games.
Yeah.
Every single game. He finished the year with a 275 average, 35 home runs, 109 RBIs, 12 stolen bases, and a 929 OPS. He also led the league in walks. I consider it a good year for Juan Soto, but it could have been better. But Brent, is that good?
It is good.
It's a good year.
It was a good year.
It's a good year. But Would have liked to see him show up in August in the beginning of the year instead when it really mattered the most.
You and your damn expectations.
I know.
Exactly.
My fault for having expectations for these players that put all these expectations on themselves.
All right, we're going to get to San Diego State throughout the course of the show, including at 5:30 with our Aztec Rewind. And yes, it came in a 49-10 loss to Air Force. But in the loss, Jack Browning, San Diego State's kicker, set a school record and a Mountain West record with a 61-yard field goal that would have been good from 71 or more yards. So, Brent, is that good?
It is good!
That was the highlight.
While that was the only highlight from the game, I can't let that be my first thing.
That's
I
not
think
your
about.
takeaway?
That's not my takeaway. 49-10 when you have a 7-point lead, and the way that you looked in the second half, it was a major step back for this Aztec team. Brent, is that good?
No, he missed it.
I didn't even know that was your thing. I thought you were just going.
I'll go later. We have more time on this. That was pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, they never play Air Force like that, and Air Force did anything they really wanted, obviously, on Saturday, which is what Brady said post-game, by the way, from Colorado Springs. But it's become a spot where off a bye week when they go to Honolulu to take on the University of Hawaii, there's no real option other than winning the game. They've lost 4 straight. They need to trend towards bowl eligibility. Here's my last one. The Dallas Cowboys are 3-1. In their 3 wins, they have outscored their opponents, Jim. They get the Niners next week on Sunday Night Football.
Yes.
They've outscored their opponents in wins 108-13. Is that good?
It is good!
Are you nervous? Where's that game, Dallas?
No, San Francisco.
Oh, it must be nice.
It is nice.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. It'll be a great test, and I hope it's a good game.
It's great. All right, on the other side, we're going to get to hour 2 of Jon and Jim. Andy Halpern will join us coming up at 5 p.m. I have nothing else to say about it. I think the Niners have been very good. I think the Niners, Eagles, and Cowboys, those teams will emerge. They're 3 best teams in the NFC. But there's still a lot of football to be played to see who's better than whom.
You don't have faith.
Could be San Francisco, could be Philadelphia.
You don't have faith in the 3-1 Buccaneers.
No.
I just thought it was funny because you sounded like Nuke LaRouche reading out of the cliche handbook of, we're just going to go out there and play our best. And God willing, we'll come home with a victory.
We'll see if that happens or not.
Yes.
Sunday night. We'll see if Taylor Swift is there or not. All right, hour 2, the wrap will be on the other side. Plus, how could the Padres get better? Just by running it back and by lowering their payroll. Andy Halpern at 5 p.m. Great ticket giveaway in the 4 o'clock hour to see Avenged Sevenfold Saturday night at the North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. Hour 2, Jon and Jim next.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. Padres season is mercifully over. They're 82-80 for the 2023 campaign, missing out on the postseason. We now wait to see if any changes will be had and made by this Padres team. Moving over to the Aztecs this past weekend, not a good weekend for the Aztecs. They lost 49-10 to Air Force, losing 4 games in a row after starting their season 2-0. And tonight concludes week 4 of the NFL with Monday Night Football between the Seattle Seahawks and the New York Giants. Saquon Barkley has been ruled out for tonight's game for the Giants. And this update's been brought to you by Staples.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? It is hour 2 of Jon and Jim. In 1 hour, Annie Halpern from the UT, her thoughts on today's statement, quote unquote, from Peter Seidler, Padres chairman. We'll get to the wrap coming up in a moment. We've got a giveaway for you this hour as well. Your chance to see Avenged Sevenfold. That's Saturday night. North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. Tickets and info at Ticketmaster.com. Keep listening for your chance to win. There's a lot to, it's interesting. Watching the Padres over the last 2 weeks, we said this repeatedly. We were just waiting for the season to end. No matter what happened, if they went 2-14 down the stretch, or if they went 14-2 down the stretch, which is what they did, either way, they were going to be out. And that's exactly what happened. They could have gone 15-1, Jim, down the stretch and been out. So we're waiting and waiting and waiting. We're like, well, Black Monday's coming, right? This is the day. Everyone's off. This is when you make your changes. And they sent something out at 8 a.m. And it was a statement. And who knows the next time we hear from them?
And who even knows if that statement was made with everybody knowing that statement was being made?
True. Right. It came from Peter Seidler.
Like this. And I'd be curious to go back and see like statements that were made at the end of seasons. If it was AJ Preller that was making the definitive statement, if it was both AJ Preller and, Peter Seidler or / Ron Fowler, was it just one or the other? Like, who's running the ship here? Who's in charge? And Will Holder, my buddy Will, I'm sure he's listening, but he put out a tweet just moments ago, and I completely agree with the sentiment.
All right,
completely agree.
Let me hear it.
The Padres have done a great job at making sure none of us have a clue as to what's happening. I can't say it any better. I have no clue what's happening right now. None. I don't know if they're going in a different direction. I don't know if one of them's gone. I don't know if both of them are back. I don't know if both of them are gone. I don't know when they're going to speak publicly. I don't know if we're going to have a press conference to get answers, to ask questions. I don't know anything except for a really kind of not great statement and from Peter Seidler this morning at 8 a.m.
What's interesting is, so I've got like a graduate, I don't know if it's a degree, it's more of a certificate.
Oh,
it's
you're smart.
Strategic communications.
Oh.
Okay. And like communications 101
is to communicate.
would be not to issue this statement, because basically you've created unnecessary noise. Now there was going to be noise. There was going to be noise today.
Yeah.
If they said nothing, but we could have always said today that, well, presumably they're meeting. Kevin Acee had reported that. Dennis Lynn had reported that. So there was this assumption of a meeting that could resolve something sooner rather than later. But to put out the statement with really nothing to say is typically seen as unnecessary. Don't insert yourself into something that you don't need to be inserted into. We all know it was a disappointing year. Why are you sending out the statement that we're going to do this top to bottom assessment beginning today? Well, obviously, you had a disappointing year. Like, you don't need to send out a statement, hey, we're going to see if we need to do things better. Well, you do.
They actually didn't say they had a disappointing year, John.
Well, they did say it didn't live up to expectations.
Okay.
Right? That it failed to meet, and it's such a short statement, we could read it again.
I would like Peter to really drive home the fact that this is kind of unacceptable. But you know what I mean? Like, why do it? And again, seriously, like,
from a communications perspective, everyone knows it's been a disaster.
Yeah.
So why insert yourself into something and create unnecessary noise around something that is already very noisy?
Yeah. It's I mean, from running the team standpoint, Peter Seidler's not had a great season, along with everybody. And it started in spring training, pretty much going above his general manager's head and signing Manny Machado because he loves Manny Machado. That so far in the season one of a 10-year relationship or 11-year relationship did not go well at all. To two, his glowing endorsements of AJ Preller in the middle of the season to Kevin Acee, to the point where, and it's not of Preller's fault, but forever he will be known as excellence. So when you don't win, you're just going to get made fun of. And that's because of your owner saying those things about you. To now the end of the season where you release a statement that has now caused more questions than answers and has put all Padres fans kind of in this limbo area of like, what's happening? Everybody's watching this and waiting to hear and know definitively what the direction is going to be of this franchise. And I'm not saying it's like it has to come out today. In any other season, I would not say like it has to come out the day after the season. But dude, you can't have this type of year with this much expectation to not immediately have some type of resolution and decision be made fairly quickly.
It has to come out today, to be honest. And it's not going to, and so be it. The world's going to keep spinning. But like the Mets, disappointing. They were proactive on everything, to the point of Showalter, to the point of David Stearns hiring, to the point of their trade deadline. It's like the Padres are reactive to everything. Let's go chase something down at the trade deadline, even though we know it's not realistic. Let's figure something out now that the season is over. We've got time with it. Let's put out a statement that doesn't really say anything. It's like all these other teams, Angels, Mets, White Sox. I know they're not all in the same category. It's like when things don't work out, they're decisive in their action. For whatever reason, the Padres are unwilling to do that.
And if they do bring both of them back this next season,
right?
What's going to change? You said changes were coming. What's changing? Oh, and by the way, you think Bob's coming back on just his final 1-year deal? Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know.
No chance.
You say no chance?
If I were Bob,
right? Because then you, at that point, maybe you just go elsewhere.
Like, I'm not coming back on a lame duck year, because what if this team underperforms again because I don't have the necessary pieces from this guy over here that doesn't know how to build a roster, and then I'm going to get blamed for it? You know how easy it's going to be to fire me? Very easy. So the only way I'm coming back is like, you better give me some type of insurance here, because working on a 1-year deal, like, I don't know, unless he has it set in stone that he is going to retire and he was planning on retiring after next season. Because Bob's not, I mean, he's in his 60s. So
he's in his early 60s.
He is his early 60s. You know, how long is he going to be managing? I don't know. And I don't know if next year was like, he said, look, I'm just only going to do this for 3 years, and then I'm out.
That's what I always thought, by the way. The day he was hired, I remember saying that. I said, this is the window in time. Go win big. This isn't going to be a 10-year managerial run. We can now guarantee that.
Yeah.
There's no path to beyond like 4 seasons. It might be shocking if he gets a 3rd season to some. So it was always now or never.
Yeah.
And that's where we are. Is it now or never?
And is this the best roster to win a World Series next year?
Or is it the Mets? Is it probably not?
Probably not. I mean,
is it the Giants?
Probably not. Some could argue that the Padres, out of those 3 teams, have the best roster. But things can change very quickly. I mean, what if all of a sudden the Padres trade Juan Soto this offseason? Are you saying that next year's team's a World Series contender? So I'm not.
I don't know if I'm saying next year's team's a World Series contender regardless. Is there anything they can do this offseason if they keep the leadership team, quote unquote, intact, that will lead you down a path of saying they are a legitimate World Series contender?
No, because I thought that this team was a legitimate World Series contender,
Right.
and they fell flat on their face. So whatever they do this offseason, and whatever roster that they throw out there in spring training, and whatever roster they have come opening day, I am in a full-fledged, well, We'll see what happens. I can't definitively say this is a World Series roster because last year's team had so much talent on it, and it completely crumbled when expectations were high. They completely just, failed every test that you threw at this team as for pressure, for win streaks, for extra inning games. When it mattered the most, they failed every test.
All right, coming up at 5 p.m., Annie Halbrin from the San Diego Union Tribune coming up later this hour. Again, your chance to win those tickets to see Avenged Sevenfold. That's Saturday night, North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. Tickets and info at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, let's get to this.
Do you think Xander Bogaerts would be a good third or first baseman?
Okay, we haven't even talked about this yet, but yesterday it was asked of Xander about switching positions, and Kevin made it clear that those talks are coming. And again, I mean, I feel like I'm just completely just destroying this franchise at every moment, but
No, you are.
I know I am, and I think for good reason. But we're talking about him switching positions at the end of year one. The end of year one of an 11-year deal for $280 million. We're talking about him switching positions to first base.
And he was quoted yesterday saying, "I'm not getting any younger."
Red flag. Red flag. And if you switch him to first base and you throw out the numbers that he had this year, that's not production that a $20+ million first baseman should be doing. That's like worse than Eric Hosmer.
Well, it's like doubling Jake Cronenworth's salary and putting someone of Jake Cronenworth's hitting ability at this point in his career. He's never been a power guy. He's hit 30 home runs one time. Every other year has been 23 or fewer. He hit 19 this year. You don't hit 19 home runs at first base and have an OPS of 780.
And guys, a spade of spades. And Xander Bogaerts did not have a good season. I do not care about these end of the season numbers that he put up in September to make his year on paper look better. But you watch the games. I know you all did. You tell me, does Xander Bogaerts have a good year or not? Because for me, he did not.
Well, it's going to be a worse year the second they move him from shortstop to first because you need offensive productivity out of first. Here's the future for Bogaerts for me. You play short as long as possible, and then you're the DH. The problem is you have Manny Machado, who's also signed through age 41. You can't have two DHs. Right now, Xander Bogaerts is your shortstop. Yeah. Just like right now, Manny Machado is your third baseman. Ha-Seong Kim's your second baseman. Go sign a first baseman if you want a first baseman. Don't go put Xander Bogaerts there. But again, they got to save money, and that might be the path in which they do it. Next question.
Were you guys impressed by Zach Wilson last night in the loss for the Jets?
It was funny. I was thinking to myself, you know how many Swifties are watching this game thinking like this is their first time watching NFL, and they think that Zach Wilson's better than Patrick Mahomes because Patrick Mahomes did not have a good game.
He struggled.
He had a bad game last night, and Zach Wilson was the better quarterback in the game. I got to see it for more weeks. Like you can't just do it 1 week and all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh, Zach Wilson, he finally figured things out." If he does what he did last night for a majority of the remainder of the season, then yeah, I think you should feel really good about Zach Wilson. But he's still, the fumble in the fourth quarter. You're like,
that was terrible.
Come on, man.
I feel like the difference, even in a game like that where Mahomes is not at his best and multiple picks, the difference between good and great, even if Wilson yesterday was good, is that one play. Yep. The fumble in that spot, and you don't get the ball back, Jim. And then how about Mahomes having the wherewithal to slide at the 1 yard line to end the game? Would have been over either way if they went up by 10. They're late, but Mahomes makes the play. He did it with his legs repeatedly on the final drive. And Zach Wilson did not make the play. Yes, Zach Wilson was good, but he wasn't great last night. And again, I mean, you're just buying time here for Aaron Rodgers at some point in the future. Next question.
How concerned are you about the direction of Aztec football following their 49-10 loss to Air Force?
I'm concerned.
Is that your question?
That's my question. I'm concerned. I am. This season coming in, and I said it was going to be a very important season for Brady Hoke. Coming off of last year was disappointing. This year, it's shaping up to be even more disappointing. The biggest stretch of your season where you could not afford to go 0-4, you went 0-4, and you ended that streak by getting pummeled by Air Force. It was a bad look on Saturday night. It was not good. I think for Brady will tell you it was not good himself. He will flat out say it was just embarrassing. But the direction of this program, it's not going in the direction that you want it to see go. It feels like it's going in the opposite direction. At a time in Aztec football history where you can't really afford that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things here. There's some similarities to last year where they started really slow, and then they made the change to Jalen Maiden, and Ryan Lindley came in, and I think they were 5-2 over a 7-game stretch. You could absolutely argue they've played their toughest part of the schedule already, but can they rebound? Right? I mean, you got to be near flawless in the second half of the schedule. It is quote unquote easier. It really is.
Like, how many wins do you see here? I see no more than 6.
First of all, you have to get to 6, to your point, right? Hawaii, Nevada, both have had bad years. Utah State has been great. Colorado State's not going to be easy based on the Colorado game.
At Colorado State.
San Jose State, I don't think is easy, even though they're 1-4. You're on the road. And then Fresno State could be perfect when you play them the final week of the regular season. You got to find a way to get 4 wins. You got to hope that this bye week is beneficial for the program. Because you're right, Saturday, I mean, you don't see San Diego State play Air Force like that. I mean, Air Force, it was incredible what
Dominated
they did.
Them.
Over the course of 4 quarters. So they got to get it turned around.
If you finish this season 5-7 and you miss out on a bowl game, like you're going to see, and it's already happening. Aztecs fans are going to be very upset, and they're already upset, and rightfully so.
Yeah, the expectation is to win Mountain West Championships.
Yeah, there's expectations, and so far Brady Hoke has not won a conference championship ever, and it's very concerning. It's not pretty right now.
Next question.
When do you think we'll know the fate of AJ Preller and Bob Melvin?
Like 2 months. I mean, it feels like forever,
winter meetings,
dude.
day 2. Last year, the big signing was Xander Bogaerts. This year, it's, hey, we've parted ways with Bob Melvin. I think we know. I mean, I honestly have no idea. I think within the month, to be honest with you, I don't think it's today. The next scheduled off day in the postseason is Friday, I believe, before the start of the NL and ALDS this weekend. So I don't think before Friday, Jim. I really don't.
I mean, what are they? Does anybody know out there if this meeting has already taken place yet? Where's our spies at Petco Park? Come on, I know we have spies.
The meeting's over, man. It's 4:20. You got Bob Melvin, your 60-year-old manager. You got AJ Preller, who works 24 hours a day. They're not meeting at 2.
We can't have any spies at Petco taking pictures of Bob and AJ going into Petco Park.
They met at 7, and 7's late. I'm sure they met at 9. You know what I mean? And 9's late. They didn't meet at 4. So if they've met, they've met. And I doubt it was a 7-hour presentation meeting. It was, can we do this or not? And why or why not? And let's make a determination moving forward. You know, I mean, Bob Melvin, in theory, it's a good gig. With this payroll, even if it's 200 plus, with this star-studded lineup, in theory, there's a lot to work with. And they had success 2 years ago. AJ Preller's not going to go anywhere unless he's forced out. Bob Melvin could go somewhere, whether or not he's forced out with the openings we're seeing right now around baseball. But you just said it. Like, you got to ask yourself, if you're Bob Melvin, do I have a better chance of winning in San Diego or with the New York Mets? Do I have a better chance of winning in San Diego or with the San Francisco Giants? And in 2024, the answer could very well be San Diego. Maybe that changes in 2025, but I don't know if you got a chance to win a World Series anywhere if it's between San Diego, San Francisco, and the Mets a year from now.
Well, that's not the only question that's being asked.
Okay, what are the other questions being asked?
Can I work with AJ?
True, but like, what gives me the best chance to win?
Working with somebody that you're on the same page with and you have a good working relationship with?
Maybe.
We saw so many times this year the roster construction being brought up by Bob Melvin after games. And the reports of like this conflict between Melvin and Preller on how to use Matt Carpenter. Like the back of the bullpen, the issues with Josh Hader not being on the same page. Like, you should have your GM and your manager both spearheading how to properly use Josh Hader and making sure that you're all on the same page. And for whoever on the roster is wondering about playing time, be on the same page. And that wasn't the case at all. And I don't think that's been the case for 2 years. I think in 2022, they got away with it a little bit because they were winning. Now, they weren't really like winning at this good clip. I mean, Bob had to rip into this team in September because they almost got no hit by some no-name guy in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And Juan Soto had a horrible last 2 months with the Padres. He hit like 219. And Josh Bell came over here, did absolutely nothing. I think he went over 40 for a stretch.
Something like that.
I mean, you've had problems up and down this roster the last 2 years, but they've overcome it one season to get to an NLCS. And I think that's a credit to Bob. I think it's a credit to Bob for making sure, like you said, they didn't quit, which they could easily have done this September. But it's also good that circumstances, they were playing against AAA teams for half the month. So that's also a little bit of luck there that was given to the Padres at the end of the season. But like when it mattered the most, dude, there was just dysfunction. When it mattered the most, there were problems. When it mattered the most, the roster construction failed this team. And so if you're Bob Melvin sitting there thinking to yourself, like, could I have the best opportunity to win here in San Diego because there's a bunch of all-star players on this team? Or do I have a better shot winning long-term? It might take a year or a year and a half or two with a team that I can work with the general manager and I can be on the same page with him. And we can have like good conversations to the point where it's not like, okay, I'm not talking to you for the next month.
Well, of course, he worked with Farhan Zaidi in Oakland,
Mhm.
and Farhan is now the general manager of the San Francisco Giants. It's a fair point. Here's the other thing. When AJ writes or Peter writes that, hey, we want to be World Series caliber, we're going to be World Series caliber in 2024, and you're getting run circles around in the National League over the last 3 or 4 years. Like, you look at the last 3 or 4 World Series winners. Yeah, it was Houston last year. But, like, the Dodgers, yeah, sure, it was a short season, whatever. They won the World Series. And the Padres fans would take credit for it if they won the World Series in 2020. I promise you that. 2021 Atlanta. This year, what if Atlanta wins a World Series? What if the Dodgers win a World Series? Now, 2 of the last 3 World Series are going to the Dodgers, or 2 of the last 3 or 4 are going to the Braves. Like, you're supposed to be competing with the Dodgers and the Braves. You're not even in the conversation. You're not even in the tournament. And one of those 2 teams could be winning a second championship this decade. This was supposed to be the decade of the Padres. Well, there's 6 years left. They got some catching up to do.
A lot of catching up to do. A lot of catching up to do. And until we actually get definitive answers, we sit here and wait. We wait.
We're just waiting.
We're just waiting.
All right, here's what we have. Coming up this hour, your chance to win a pair of tickets to see Avenged Sevenfold. That's Saturday night at the North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. Tickets and info at Ticketmaster.com. Annie Halbrin will join us coming up at 5 p.m. We'll get to our Aztec Rewind at 5:30. The question we've been asking Padres fans today.
And asking.
844-570-1360. How can this team get better by running it back and lowering payroll? 844-570-1360. 70470. Start your message with team. Stay with us on Jon and Jim. Hey guys, it's Schaefer, and if you need cash to pay off credit cards or do a home improvement, listen, I want to tell you about the newest, fastest, easiest way to access the equity in your home. Loan Pronto is here with their revolutionary Express Equity line of credit. This is so cool. Okay, they've got this amazing program. You can get cash out of your home in as fast as 5 days, and you can leave your 3% mortgage intact. Loan Pronto can take 50, 100, 200K out of your home. Record high home values, right? That's money you can use to pay off those credit cards with those insane rates of 25%. Maybe you want to pay for gas with the price of gas right now, or use that money to do a home improvement, maybe add solar panels. Best part, 9 out of 10 homeowners won't even need an appraisal, all right? So call now and see how easy it is to get a lot of cash in about 5 days. It's Loan Pronto's Express Equity line of credit. Here's the number, 619-207-4336 or loanpronto.com. That's 619-207-4336. 4336. That's 619-207-4336. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. The Padres season is now officially over. They missed out on the postseason this year as they went 82-80. Just a second winning season under A.J. Preller in a full year since he became the general manager back in 2015. Now we wait. We wait to see if any changes are made with this Padres organization. Playoffs in baseball start tomorrow. Moving over to the Aztecs, they did not do well this past weekend versus Air Force as they lost 49-10. They've lost 4 in a row. Next up for the Aztecs, they take on Hawaii. And Sunday Night Football tonight, Week 4 concludes with the New York Giants taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Saquon Barkley has been ruled out for this game for the Giants. And this update's been brought to you by Indeed.com.
If you want to weigh in, I mean, how does this team get better if they just continue running in place? And are you even running in place if you're going to lower your payroll by $55 million?
You want to talk about that real quick here?
Well, yeah, I do.
Because the payroll discussion.
Yes, I do.
I'm just saying, like, this conversation we could have right now is about payroll, because the payroll is something I don't think people are truly grasping of how dire of a situation this kind of is.
Mm-hmm.
When you start hearing words of like debt reduction, and when you start seeing that the team has already put together plans that they have to submit to Major League Baseball to prove to them that they're going to get their payroll in compliance,
right?
Like, and you start hearing the well, we want to get it down to 200 million off of 255 million, and you're thinking to yourself, well, dude, $200 million, like that's enough to build a winning roster and enough to build a team that can win a World Series. And then when I show you the players under contract for this team and how much money they're going to be making and what it equals, that's when you're like, uh-oh.
And which is why the comp to like Atlanta doesn't make any sense. You're like, well, Atlanta is really good and they have a $200 million payroll. Yeah, credit to them because they've spent the money effectively. Just because Atlanta's good at 200 doesn't mean you can be good at 200. And here's why. Because you overspent your 200.
Yep.
It's like when you're doing a fantasy draft and you got $100 to spend and you spend $82 on Mahomes. I mean, you need to fill out the roster. Now you got $18 for all these other positions. That's what they've done with this roster. The Machados, the Bogarts, you've overspent there. It's not to say they're not capable of being good. Good at what cost?
Yeah.
Atlanta has no $35 million player.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they have a $200 million payroll. The Padres have essentially multiple 30 million plus players and potentially are adding one for next year in Juan Soto.
And hey, next year's team could be a $200 million payroll with Juan Soto on it. But guess what half of the roster is? Prospects
and high-priced players.
I'm talking about half of the roster outside of the high-priced players
is all on rookie deals.
Rookie deals, arbitration deals. You're looking at a rotation next year of like Nick Martinez, Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, Pedro Avila, Matt Waldron. Is that good enough to win you a World Series?
No, and that's going to change. But you're right. You're saying if you're steadfast on the number of like 200 million, then there's going to have to be real cuts, which means you're not going to be able to go out and fill your rotation with free agents, and you're going to have to do it internally.
And then you have a back end of the bullpen with a guy who is unproven as a closer in Robert Suarez. Or if you want to go the route of getting at this closer position to Scott Barlow. All right. He's like he looks like Josh Hader. So maybe he can pitch like Josh Hader.
Maybe he's better.
Maybe he'll actually pitch 3 days in a row and give you more than 3 outs a bunch of times. That'd be
probably not.
What a concept.
844-570-1360. How do the Padres get better by running it back and lowering payroll? 844-570-1360. Jose wants to weigh in. Jose, you're on with Jon and Jim, and thanks for calling in.
Hey guys.
Hey man.
The first thing I'm doing is firing the main problem, which is AJ Preller. AJ Preller is horrendous. He brought in Sander Bogarts, a fifth-place batter who got less than 60 RBIs this year. Absolutely horrible year. I don't care what the back of his card says. Padres, if you go into Sport Track, it tells you what their payroll is going to be next year. It's horrendous. If they were to keep Waka and Lugo and Nick Martinez, they're at about $170 million. That's not counting Juan Soto. And that's counting like 13 players out of 26 player payroll. The Padres got to decline the option on Nick Martinez because he's not worth $16 million. He's not even worth $8 million. They got to let Waka go. They got a mutual option for 16 years. Waka had a good year, but I don't think he's worth $16 million. Lugo's going to want more than $7.5 million. These are all little things. They're going to have to go out next year and get some of these guys that are bad, had bad years, maybe like a Lucas Giolito, and pay these guys maybe $5 to $7 million, because there's no way they're going to do it. What really gets me about AJ Preller is because AJ Preller getting Xander Bogaerts for the Padres, we're not going to be able to afford Juan Soto. And Xavier Bogaerts, nice guy, less than 60 RBIs in a fifth place position. Absolutely horrible. He was the king of the double play with men in scoring position. And this whole team was a mess this year. They played the absolute worst teams in baseball, the White Sox, A's, Cardinals, Rockies. So please don't get all excited about this winning streak when there was nothing going on. Padres fans really are great fans, but they're not at all educated.
Well, I don't know about that. Jose, thank you for the call and thank you for listening in. I don't care, by the way, if they went 14-2 down the stretch, beating the Astros, Dodgers, Braves, and Tampa Bay. I don't think it matters. I just don't. I would have then argued that they did it because they were out of it, and it's irrelevant to what they do in 2024.
And
just like beating bad teams is irrelevant to what they're going to do next year.
Dude, if that happened, I'd have been even more mad. I'm like,
exactly.
Like, you're beating all these really good teams that are going to the postseason right now, and you couldn't beat the crappy teams early on in the season, in the middle of the year when it mattered the most, when you were like in turmoil and when you needed to turn things around. It's I love the call there because a lot of things that were said there are true. And Xander Bogaerts, like, spade's a spade. He had a bad year, and you chose Xander. I think there was a lot of thinking in this organization that Manny was going to fully opt out, so this was the backup plan. Instead, the owner signed Manny, and now you have both of them, and so you got two guys in their 30s getting older who one's making $350 million and the other has $280 million tied up. And you got a little problem here. You actually have a big problem.
Got a big problem. I mean, Jake Cronenworth, I know it's nowhere near the money, but he's not a spring chicken either. And you signed him to a 7-year deal. All right, back to the phones, 844-570-1360. Dave, welcome back to Jon and Jim. Thanks for calling in.
Well, thanks, guys. Listen, several things. I'll try to be quick. I don't know the answer to your question, first of all, because there's such a bunch of dynamics there that have yet to play out, even in the front office. So until all of that gets solved, it's kind of like, okay, it's just guesswork at this point on the fans' part. Having said that, look, they put all their poker chips in the middle of the table this year. And this is why it went World Series or bust, because they flat out knew that this year, if they didn't do it, there were going to be revenue implications next year and beyond. And it got even more acute when the TV deal dried up. So that's why, and it finally dawned on me today, I want to see what you think about this. That's why I think Peter is so protective of AJ, because Peter, at the end of the day, authorized all these contracts, authorized all of this spending, and he too is just as responsible for putting them into this financial quagmire of contracts that AJ is. So, Jim, you said a long time ago, we might have an owner problem. I think we got an owner problem. I really do. And, they're in a mess right now, and I don't know how they get out of it. And, I know how we would like them to get out of it. It starts with the president of baseball operations, but, whether or not Peter has got the guts to do what he needs to do, and also he needs to take the hit on authorizing this mess. I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Dave, thank you. And I don't know. When I read the statement, it doesn't scream to me like I'm about to make a change at vice president of baseball operations. Maybe he does, and maybe it's ambiguous for a reason. But when I see
president,
what's that?
You mean president?
Vice president of baseball operations, AJ Preller?
Isn't he president of baseball operations?
I thought he was VP. Whatever he is, who cares?
Yeah.
He's on the. If he's the president of baseball operations, which I think you're right, then he's part of the leadership team.
Yeah.
There's no president of baseball operations that doesn't report directly to an owner.
Yeah.
Therefore, when I read that, it's like, I don't know. It doesn't scream AJ Preller's on his way out. Let's go to John real quick. John, you're on with Jon and Jim.
Yeah, hi. Every turn that we talk about the Padres, it comes down to Xander Bogaerts' contract. It's like that's the fly in the ointment. They talk about moving positions. We're talking about, we can't afford to pay, our pitchers to come back. It all comes down to Bogaerts. And who did that? Preller. He's got to go. And to tell you another thing, in my opinion, I don't know, but if they can find someone to take Machado's contract, I would do it. And then I would try to find out some way if we can keep Juan Soto and build this team around Fernando Tatis Jr. and Juan Soto. That's my opinion.
Thanks, John. Manny Machado is not going anywhere.
Neither is Xander.
No, because nobody wants those contracts,
And-
and they both have no trade clauses.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
You made your bed. You got to sleep in it. You chose Manny as the face of your franchise. You chose, and I'm not saying it's a bad decision to choose Manny Machado as the face of your franchise. Just you have to know that like what comes with that. What comes with that is a person who leadership qualities I don't think are up to par for what is needed of a leader. I think a guy who can be very moody at times, but also a guy that can put up some big time seasons when, he's healthy. But you also are now in his 30s and you're declining, and every year he's injured. Every year. Now he plays through it, but every year is injured.
True. And John's like, listen, this comes down to that bad Preller signing of Bogarts, but the other side of the coin is it comes down to that bad contract given to Manny Machado. Which again, at the time, it's hard because we have the benefit of hindsight. It's their job to make decisions in real time. Today, both of the deals look bad.
Right.
Today.
In this point in time, we can only go off of what we've seen for the first year of these mega deals. And right now, these two contracts are bad contracts.
Hopefully it changes in 2024. Call right now if you want 2 free tickets to see Avenged Sevenfold this Saturday at North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. Brent, what do I need to know about Avenged Sevenfold?
It sounded like you were going to say Avengers.
That's no, not that. But if you want
Avengers
2
are
free
here.
tickets to see Avenged Sevenfold, 2 free tickets, call 844-570-1360. First 2 callers are going to play Trainwreck Radio. That's trivia. So call right now. This is Saturday night at the North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. 2 free tickets to see Avenged Sevenfold. Pick up your phone and call right now. 844-570-1360. That's 844-570-1360. Annie Halpern will join us at 5 p.m. from the UT. Stay with us on Jon and Jim. All right, on the other side, we are giving away these tickets to see Avenged Sevenfold. We need you to call right now if you want those tickets. If you want to play trivia, call right now, 844-570-1360. 2 free tickets to Avenged Sevenfold this Saturday at the North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. Call right now. The number to call is 844-570-1360. These are 2 free tickets for Saturday night. Call 844-570-1360. Call right now. That's next. All right, Trainwreck Radio in a moment. Annie Halbrin will join us in about 11 or 12 minutes at the top of the hour. Be listening for that. Annie Halbrin from the UT, her thoughts on today's statement and what's next for the Padres. So Brent doesn't even know this, but I've been telling Jim this. So I was supposed to fly to Vegas tonight because my brother is celebrating his 50th birthday. He turns 50 on October 13th.
And you're just staying for the night?
I was just going to go for the night. All right. And it was very spur. Yeah, exactly. It's got problem written all over it.
You know what also has written all over
the
it?
The second it's wheels up, AJ Preller gets a 10-year deal.
Yeah.
Or something happens.
Weldon's fired, or they're both 100%. Back, or some.
But if I don't go, nothing happens.
Right.
You know, if I don't go, nothing's happening. But here's the issue. My flight's been delayed. And I'm only going for the night, and then I'm turning around and coming back tomorrow at lunchtime.
Oh.
So, like,
you better hope your flight's not delayed tomorrow, buddy.
Well, you'll be fine.
If you're going to rip me for missing a flight or for it being delayed,
it's going to be Palm Desert all over again.
Yep.
Oh, no, that was Santa Monica.
Oh, whatever.
Remember? Oh, that was
like, I'll leave at like noon.
I'll leave at 12:30 and I'll be at downtown by 3.
Yeah, to go through LA traffic,
summer
and
beach
oceanside traffic, and
that was honestly one of the worst moments of my life.
Well, you're about to potentially experience the second worst.
I think I'm going to cancel the flight because it's already delayed. But I feel bad. I mean, I was supposed to get at 8:30. Now it's 9:30. It's like, I mean, and he just came from New York tonight. So, like, is he going to be up really late if he came from New York, which 3 hours later?
How long are they staying in Vegas?
Yeah, because everyone goes to Vegas to sleep.
Yeah, but he's 50. I mean, my brother's not like me. I mean, we're not staying out till 4 a.m.
Right. This is not a.
He's with his wife.
Yeah, but you don't go to Vegas to sleep.
It's also not a typical Vegas trip because John, it's not a typical Vegas person.
Who, me?
Yeah.
By the way, caller 2 just dropped off. We need someone to call in right now if you want to win free tickets to see Avenged Sevenfold. Call right now. We'll play some trivia. Call 844-570-1360. John, stay where you are. Chris, if you want, call back. Or anyone, call right now. We have 2 free tickets on the line for Saturday night. If you're looking for something to do this Saturday night, Avenged Sevenfold, free tickets. Call right now, 844-570-1360. Again, pick up the phone and call. Free tickets for Saturday night, 844-570-1360. So call right now if you want to play.
If you do go to Vegas tonight, John.
Yes.
I have never wanted anything more in my life than to have the Padres announce something. I want it so bad.
And I have a brand new microphone. I'm so excited to use at home.
If anybody wants to relive microphone gate from last night for the wrap-up show, if you want to experience that train wreck, just go to our wrap-up show YouTube channel and you can experience how just awful it was last night. Yeah. It got to a point where John had to go out tonight or this afternoon to buy a new microphone.
I was so paranoid about this. I needed this fixed immediately that I went out and bought this Shure MV7 podcast microphone.
Yeah, he went out and bought like one of the best microphones you can get.
Yeah, I spent some money on this, so we should be good moving forward.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Cross your fingers. All right, let's play.
All right, 3 questions, 2 contestants, 1 lifeline. Today's 2 contestants. We have John and Chris. John, you called in first, so you have your choice of John or Jim. Who do you want to go with?
Well, since all the cool guys are named John, I'll go with John.
I like that. Thank you.
I was expecting him to say Jim. All right, so John, you get John, and Chris, you get me. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Oh, great.
Yeah,
sound
very
quality.
good voice, Chris.
It's the phone quality. It's amazing.
Yeah, that too.
All right, Brent, what's today's question of the day?
All right, guys, the 2023 Major League Baseball regular season is over. And in case you didn't know, the Padres didn't make the playoffs.
What?
And they also had the worst record in 1-run games at 9-23.
Is that good?
Today's question, no, it's not. Today's question, can you name the 6 teams that had the best record in 1-run games? So the opposite of the Padres. We're looking for the 6 teams that had the best record in 1-run games this year.
Okay. Chris, you are up first. What is your first guess? You do have your lifeline if you choose to use it.
I'll go with Atlanta.
Atlanta. How many 1-run games did they play, though? I don't know. It blew a lot of people out. Yeah, I knew it.
You knew that? How'd you know that?
Because
it's so hard.
It's a very hard thing. Atlanta, I don't know how many 1-run games they play this year.
They were 7th.
Okay. No, not a bad guess. Not a bad guess, Chris. John, you're up next. What is your first guess? You do have your lifeline if you choose to use it.
I'll go with those hated Dodgers.
Wow. See, it can be very
11th.
random. It can be random.
Chris, you're up next. What is your second guess? You do have your lifeline if you choose to use it.
Okay. How about the Rays then? Better pitching, maybe less.
Okay. Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay.
No.
Oh my goodness. John, you're up next.
We need one here, John.
What is your second guess? You do have your lifeline if you choose to use it.
Let's see. How about the Mets?
The Mets?
The Mets.
They're terrible.
The Mets. The Mets on the. Oh man. All right, Chris, let's get one here, man. Let's get one. Your final guess, and you do have your lifeline if you want to use it.
I believe when the Padres were playing the Giants the other day, I saw a graphic, and I think the Giants had a pretty good one-run record.
Giants.
The Giants on the list?
Yeah, I remember that graphic. I saw that graphic.
That was going to be my guess because of that graphic.
That's a good call.
All right, John, you need this to send this thing to overtime. What is your final guess? You do have your lifeline, too, if you want to use it.
Well, what do you think, John? I'll use the lifeline.
I mean, sheer guess. I remember when Baltimore was here, they were doing the discrepancy where Baltimore is good and the Padres are bad in 1-run games. That was 2 months ago. I'm going to say the Baltimore Orioles.
That sounds like a good guess to me. Go with that one.
Yeah. How about that?
Okay.
How about that?
Awesome.
With their 2-inning closer.
All right. Brent, let's get to overtime quickly here.
All right, guys, how overtime is going to work is I'm going to ask you a question. When I am done asking the question, you're going to yell the name of your teammate today, John or Jim. You're not going to yell out the answer. Whoever yells out their teammate first, you're going to win the game by getting the question right, or you're going to lose the game by getting the question wrong. Do you guys got it?
Got it.
You both have it?
We're just saying that. I'm saying Jim. That's it.
Yeah. So that's how you buzz in.
Yeah.
Yep. Instead of saying the answer, you're just going to say the name of your
And
partner.
then
Then we'll ask
I
you for the
see.
answer.
Gotcha.
Okay. You guys ready?
Yep.
Okay. Today's overtime question. Who's the top seeded team in the National League this year?
Jim.
I heard Jim.
All right.
Chris?
It's Atlanta.
The Atlanta Braves is
Atlanta.
correct
Good
for the
job.
win. Wow.
Good job.
Chris, congratulations. You've won a pair of tickets to see Avenged Sevenfold Saturday at the North Island Credit Union Amphitheater. Tickets and info at Ticketmaster.com. Brent, quickly, who do we have on this list?
That's my partner.
All right. Number 1 was Miami. They went 33-13 in one-run games this year. Baltimore was number 2. The Brewers were 3. The Nationals, believe it or not, were 4th. Then the Giants, and then the 6th was the Pirates. So two of the worst teams in the league had the best records with one run.
All right, Annie Halpern from the UT, her thoughts on today's Padres statement and where they go from here. She'll join us next. Stay with us on Jon and Jim.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. Padres season is officially over. No playoffs this year. They finished 82-80, finishing the season with a 14-2 stretch over some of the worst teams in baseball. Now, the offseason awaits and questions still remain. Today, Peter Seidler released a statement saying a lot, but also not saying a lot. We still have no clue if AJ Preller and Bob Melvin will return next season. Moving over to the Aztecs this past weekend, they did not have a good weekend as they got blown out by Air Force on the road 49-10. They have now lost 4 games in a row. Next up for the Aztecs, they'll take on Hawaii. And tonight, week 4 concludes in the NFL as the New York Giants host the Seattle Seahawks. Saquon Barkley has been ruled out of this game for the Giants. And this update's been brought to you by Staples.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? It is the final hour of Jon and Jim. We'll get you your Aztec Rewind from Saturday at Colorado Springs coming up at 5:30. We do have Jim's back page ahead this hour as well, but we're going to connect with Annie Halpern from the Union Tribune. Does a great job, really does a great job covering this team. So Annie Halpern's going to join us here momentarily from the UT. Again, we've reacted all day to your texts and your calls about this statement from Peter Seidler, the Padres chairman, and the ambiguity to it all. What does Annie make of the statement that the Padres put out earlier today? So Annie Halpern with us again here, Jon and Jim, San Diego Sports 760. Annie, always appreciate your time. So you read this paragraph statement that the Padres put out earlier today. What do you make of it? And thanks for hopping on.
Guys, thanks for having me. Always great to be on with you. I think, and I've heard you guys describe it this way as well, it left you with more questions than answers. It was kind of I thought Ryan Cohen on Twitter, Padres fan, someone sent that to me in his tweet, and I thought it was really well put. I think he said something like, this could mean everyone's gone, no one's gone, or maybe some people stay and some people are gone, And it was kind of like, that's where we were. It's like, well, what does this leave you with? It's kind of like where we started. I thought, and maybe it would have been better maybe not to say anything, but maybe they felt like, there's so much speculation that they at least wanted to put out a statement saying that they were working on stuff. But it still really doesn't leave you with a whole lot of answers. It really just kind of leaves you wondering or scratching your head, who is the leadership group? What exactly does that mean? Is that saying that what Peter wants, which is for AJ and Bob both to stay? Is that saying that that's for sure happening? Or is it kind of saying that, we'd like that to happen and we'll start doing an investigation or seeing where things go? And I also thought, it would have been nice for maybe to name those names, right? To say, like, I have my full support behind AJ Preller and Bob Melvin and look forward to them, coming back in 2024. If you kind of knew that that's where things for sure were going, and so maybe they're still not sure either, and maybe they just felt the need to put something out there.
Yeah, I do think that after this season, there had to be at least some communication between the organization and the fan base, because this wasn't good enough. And there's a lot of questions still remain with this team. But as much as you cover this team and as much as you're around it, Annie, do you feel like things, I guess, could be like if you run it back next year with AJ and Bob in place, do you think that these relationships and, things that were going wrong could be fixed into next year? Or do you think that it's going to be really hard for that to happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have two points on running it back. So let me answer the Bob and AJ one first. I think, like, it's not impossible, right? Like, you can definitely, they're two grown men. They can, I'm not saying at all that it's impossible. We've seen more crazier things happen in our lives than two grown men, figure out a way to work together and make things cohesive. But at the same time, this is an industry, every team, where there is a healthy amount of ego and a healthy amount of skepticism about the people working around you. And when the trust is breached, and I think that's kind of really what you're looking at in some senses here, it's kind of like if you're, together with someone and they cheat on you, and, you say, okay, well, we're going to go to therapy and we're going to work it out. And maybe with a lot of hard work, you can get to a point. It's not impossible. You can get to a point where you are like, hey, this relationship is better. It's even stronger. We're better for it. But you can also get to a point where even with some of that, saying that, things are going to change or whatever, you can also get to a point where you're like, I'm always looking over my shoulder. I'm always, kind of not believing the other person. This is what you got to think about too, is like the second things go wrong, do you kind of revert? That's usually when people revert to their old ways, So like, of course, if everything's going perfect, you can sort of make things work and you can kind of smile and do the song and dance. But the second things go wrong, are you gonna start, going back to that feeling of not really, trusting the other guy, or not really feeling like they have your best interest in mind or the team's best interest? And by no means, did one of them cheat on the other, so to speak, in like baseball language. I just think it's more of a trust of not feeling like they're on the same team and they're moving in the same direction, or they're getting the information, the way they need, and things like that. And the thing about it is, and it creates a culture too, where it's not just them, but it's like, you have certain coaches that feel like they need to take sides. You have certain players that feel like a little bit they need to kind of, who do I trust here? Do I trust the GM? Do I trust my manager? Who do I trust? So it kind of does trickle out to a lot more people in the organization than just these two people. And so I think, like, look, unless you really truly believe, and it's not just two people sitting at a table and kind of nodding their heads and saying, yeah, sure, this is going to work. We'll be able to do it, no problem. Which happens a lot in these situations. You're kind of putting your season 10 steps behind before it even starts by putting them back in that situation again. So I think you kind of got to look at it from like just like a psychology perspective, and that's human nature. That's not just these two men. That's human nature. And then the other part about running it back is, even if you brought it back the exact same way, like the concept of running it back, it's like, yeah, that sounds great, right? Like, especially like in the sense of like, these players are so talented and like, we're going to run it back and everything like that. But there's just life doesn't happen in a vacuum. People get older, people's motivations change, stuff happens in people's lives that affects them, injuries happen. So, even running it back with the same staff, and of course we know that they're not going to keep the exact same roster, could be better. It could be worse. It doesn't exactly always bode well either way, right? So there's a lot for them to parse out here. That's for sure.
There's no question about it. Annie Halpern from the UT with us right now, and Jon and Jim. There's a few questions here. I guess I'll ask this: why release the statement at all?
I wondered that. I think maybe
right?
sometimes there can. I think sometimes there can be sometimes when you're in a situation like this, you might feel like, I got to say something. Well, we got to say something. We can't just let these national people talk about us, and people say this and people say that. Like, we got to say something. And sometimes it could be better to just say nothing, you know what I mean? And just sort of like do your due diligence like you talked about, and maybe not say anything. But, maybe Peter felt like, people are asking and people want to know, and this will kind of alleviate some concerns. And like I said, the issue is when it creates more questions than answers, which is what this kind of did. It kind of makes you wonder, like, well, who exactly is the leadership group? And is the same people that have these problems, are they doing their own investigation? And I don't know. And is there even one? Like, is there even what kind of due diligence? Like, we'll never know. They don't really necessarily need to divulge every step of everything that they take. But I think that this was a situation where the statement was probably made with good intentions, but it may have not been needed to be made at all, if that makes sense,
Yeah. It's kind of like, well, we want you to say something, but we actually want you to say something. Like, we don't want you to create more questions than answers here, which is exactly what happened this morning from the Padres chairman, Peter Seidler. All right, Andy. So let's just say Preller returns. Okay. And let's just say that Bob Melvin returns. What do you think the fan base needs to hear from those two to feel confident going forward that this is going to work? Or can they say anything to make the fan base feel confident? Because I feel like with everything that's been reported on this relationship, that no matter what, everybody is going to feel like this is a ticking time bomb waiting to explode next year.
I don't think you can say much at this point. I really don't think it's in the best interest to kind of go out there. And I don't really think that that's Bob's style either. Like and really even AJ, right? Like it might be the organization's decision or Peter's or someone to go out there and kind of, try like the statement, go out there and say a lot, but it doesn't, I don't know that it really, matters. What matters is can you show that next year is going to be different? Like when you start playing games and not just the first month, not the second month, but throughout this, throughout a season, when you're hit with adversity, can you show that, you guys are different this year? And that's not just winning the 1-run games and things like that, although that's going to matter, but it's just a different vibe. It's got to be a different kind of, I know that word gets thrown around a lot, the culture word, but different body language. And look, I mean, there's so much we can read into that, I think that it's also fair to roll your eyes at, like, does that really matter all that much? Like, just win games or whatever, but there clearly was a disconnect this year. And I think everyone felt it, in some respects, maybe people more so that were closer, to the team on an everyday basis. But I'm sure even fans could kind of sense it. Like there was this kind of a something that just wasn't rolling quite right. So, how are you going to address that? And I think you could parade around Bob and AJ, like, put them in the middle of the field and shoot some B-roll of them talking to each other and laughing and maybe be like, look, these two guys love each other, But
optics.
What's really going to, and maybe they will, I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't, but what's really going to matter is like when they're hit with some adversity or some differences in opinions, can they show that they're going to get past that? And I don't really know how you show it. Like you're not going to do a lot of that in front of people, in front of fans and whatnot. But I guess you wouldn't have, the, just kind of the tumult that you had this season in the sense of like just a lot of what looked like a lot of strained relationships and bodies. And look, they could go out and win a lot next year. They could go out and win a lot next year and still not think the world of each other. Mm-hmm. And that's completely fine too. Like it could be that Bob, sails off into the sunset and maybe, they don't feel this, they still don't, particularly feel a certain way about each other, but because we've talked about winning hides a lot, but at the same time, like, look, that's not, you're getting, I always say in this job, and you guys too, you're paid for the bad times. Like the good times are easy, you're paid for when you got to talk about the bad times and the struggles and the this and the that. And there's just not a whole lot of great stuff to talk about for, so that's really when you got to kind of like earn that money.
Andy, final question from me. If this payroll is coming down, Kevin's reported it, other outlets have reported it. Can they get better by trimming this payroll significantly?
I think that they can still be competitive. I think that they can still be a really good team. They can, go out there, they can compete, they can be who they want to be without necessarily having the third highest contract or the third highest payroll in baseball. Like, and I think that it's important to note too, right? Like they're not saying we're going to be at the bottom third of the league. We're going to probably be, the 10, top 10, 11, 12, that sort of thing, where you still have a healthy payroll, but it's not as high. And I think that, that's a, like, you guys have talked about, I'm sure, like with the debt and everything that they're up against, it's a necessary evil that they kind of are in a position where they have to, and so they're going to have to figure that out. But this is where I think you really also, it's like kind of like what we were just talking about, you earn your money in some of the bad times. Like you probably earn your money here too. Like you earn your money, figuring out how do you get better on the fringes? How do you get the most out of some of these younger guys or even some of these older guys who, like I said, have different motivations than some of these hungrier, younger guys who want to prove themselves. But there's certainly a lot of talent that you can still bring in that is not, top of the league contract talent, or that you could find or develop or bring in. Now, whether they have those pieces right now that are ready in the farm system, I'm not sure. I don't know that's the case. So then you kind of got to, go find who's your next. If you're not going to bring back Lugo or Waka, like who are the guys that you think are going to be able to be a little bit more on the fringes of the payroll, but really make a difference and contribute, because we see that, right? We see that with other teams where they don't necessarily have a group of superstars, but they've done a really good job of development. They've done a really good job of kind of getting the most out of some of the other, 1 or 2 year contract guys that they bring in, guys in their walk years that, are really hungry to prove themselves. And you just kind of have a healthy mix of all of that. So I think they can get better, and I think they can definitely compete, but it's a matter of kind of like looking at again, I would almost want to say the psychology of that too, like the human nature of all that too, where, what is kind of, bring these guys together in a way that creates like this really good, healthy, clubhouse where they're kind of pushing each other, because the young guys do, you get those young guys in and they do kind of energize the older guys, and like the older guys feel like they've got to, teach the young guys, and there is like some symbiosis there, right? Like that, like kind of bounces back and forth. But you also have to have guys that are ready, and not guys that you're bringing up too early, or guys that really, you're kind of desperate to make stars now. So yes, the long-winded answer to your question is yes, they can. I believe they can, but it's not always that easy.
And finally, for me, Annie, the conversation this offseason, once we get past who the manager is going to be for next year and who's going to be in charge of running baseball operations, is going to be about Juan Soto. And I feel like the talk of trading potentially Juan Soto is going to intensify heading into the winter meetings this year. Good idea, bad idea, worst idea ever? Like, what are your thoughts on this idea that they might have to trade Juan Soto this offseason, because with him on the roster, the payroll is just not going to be something that they can keep around $200 million?
Yeah, exactly. Like my hunch is that they want to try to make it work with Juan Soto. And I do think that they want that, but the reality is that they might not be able to do it, right? And if you're Juan Soto, I think, it did take a while for him to get comfortable. And so I think that for him, honestly, I think he might look at it like, okay, well, I put up some really good numbers here towards the end of the year, especially. I finally feel good. I feel comfortable. But there are quite a few ballparks that he also feels comfortable in, so I will say that. But you're talking about a year where he could be traded, and so he might not have as much of a say in things or whatnot, if at all. So I think that, like, ideally they would like to stay, and I think ideally the Padres would like him to stay. But I just don't think that I personally would not be surprised if he moves, if they move him, because it's like we just talked about. You've got to bring that payroll down, and this is something like where like every team in MLB, like they have a debt ceiling, right? And so you have a certain amount of time that you're able to be up against that debt ceiling, and then you've got to bring it down. And so, if everything goes perfectly, right, and like they made the postseason this year, and they were able to reap that money and things like that, when you're up against it like they are, you're banking on things going perfectly, and it's just not realistic sometimes. Like it's not, it would be great if it did, but it's just not the way that you can sustain it. I mean, I know everyone hates that word, but it's true, and so for them, and there are some owners, right, who are more conservative with going against debt and are racking up debt, and there's some that are don't do it at all, and you wish they would spend more, and so I think the Padres are going to kind of find their sweet spot. But they're going to have to bring it down from everything that we've heard and that I've heard. So it does kind of leave a situation where if you've got to fill that rotation, and you've got to, get some other players to fill in some of the gaps that they're going to lose from guys who are free agents this year and whatnot. You probably have to move them. And I don't know that either party loves that idea, but I don't know that, but like Juan, like I think, I also don't for a second think like there's no discounts to be had here. Like there's no, like you're planning for the future too. If you're Juan Soto, and like, where can I, like what, his agent's already doing that. Boris is already kind of looking at, landing spots and things and whatever. And him in a walk year, he's probably going to have, maybe be able to put up a really, really good year. So I think that they want to capitalize on timing of all of it, but I just don't know if the Padres can make that work where he is able to stay part of that payroll.
Yeah, I mean, there's something scary about trading a 25-year-old future Hall of Famer heading into a free agent season. It's just, the idea of it is somewhat scary. Annie, we love your perspective. We appreciate your insight. It's going to be an interesting offseason, I have a feeling, from a Padres perspective.
Guys.
It's always interesting.
I don't even think the people inside the organization fully know what is going to happen and what dominoes are going to fall. So
nobody knows, which is why it's interesting.
Yeah, it's a little bit frustrating. It's just a little frustrating because you see what goes on around baseball. Mets decisive action off a disappointing year. Angels make a move today off a disappointing year, and
Giants.
here in San Diego, we're just waiting. Yeah, Giants as well. Annie, we'll do it again soon. Thank you. Always appreciate it.
We're waiting, but we got a press release this morning, guys.
We did. Yeah, we got
press
a statement.
release.
We got a
Something to talk
statement.
about.
Thanks, Annie.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, Annie Halbron from the UT, as confounded as we are, related to the Padres statement earlier today.
So on this station, we've had Annie. We've had Kevin Acey. They both cover the team every single day. Marty, she covers the team every single day. She's down there all the time.
Right.
Darren, everybody. I think everybody is in the same boat of that's interesting.
Very interesting.
I don't think I can find anybody that is in the know with this team or covers this team, right? Anybody in this town that covers this team and talks about this team day in and day out think that this press release this morning at least wasn't weird.
Yeah, I mean, it leaves you asking questions, as we've said all day. I mean, that's why I don't think it was necessary, but we'll see where they go. We'll see where they go from here. All right, on the other side, San Diego State trying to snap now a 4-game losing streak. A look back at Saturday night in Colorado Springs with our Aztec Rewind. Plus, Jim's back page is still ahead. Stay with us on Jon and Jim. All right, our Aztec rewind on the other side. A look back at Saturday night in Colorado Springs and a look ahead for San Diego State football. That's next.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. Padres season is officially over. They finished the year 82-80, missing out on the postseason. We now wait to see what changes will be made with the Padres organization. Playoffs in baseball do start tomorrow in the wild card round. Moving over to the Aztecs. They got beat up pretty bad this past weekend at Air Force, losing 49-10. Next up for the Aztecs, they take on Hawaii. And Monday Night Football is underway in New York as the Giants are taking on the Seahawks. We are scoreless still in the first quarter there. And this update has been brought to you by Staples.
All right, a couple of things before we get to the Aztec rewind. I was over at Viejas earlier today. Didn't see Jim. Did you not get the emails?
I literally don't get the emails.
Okay, well, media availability.
Richard, I need the emails, man.
You need the emails. All right, so Brian Dutcher met with the media. There were probably 24 media I mean, it was unbelievable. I'd say there were 20 media outlets.
Oh, great.
There for Brian Dutcher today.
Glad I got the memo.
Including San Diego Sports 760. A couple of updates. The transfer from Campbell J. Powell out right now with a high ankle sprain, expected to return prior to the season. Brian Dutcher was asked if he heard from anyone he didn't expect to hear from after the Final Four run. He said he heard from Steve Kerr with a letter and Brad Stevens with a letter.
Now, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, this is your guy, Steve Kerr.
I know he is my guy. When he says letter, did he get like a handwritten letter or was it like a text?
That's a good question. No, I
Probably
think letter.
Steve Kerr's, he seems like the letter kind of dude.
Yeah, no, I think letter, not text.
Same thing with Brad Stevens.
Yeah, I don't know if it was handwritten or if it was typed out, but definitely a letter is what he said.
Nowadays, it's just like he's like, hey, give me this person's number. And the PR person is like, okay, cool, I got you.
Yeah, exactly.
And they could easily just say, hey, coach, hey, Dutch, this is Steve Kerr. Wanted to relay my, congratulations and whatever else you want to say.
It was also disclosed, if you follow the message boards, you would have known this, but San Diego State's scrimmaging Arizona State this October.
Sorry, I don't follow the message boards, Don.
You should. So if you follow this, they're scrimmaging Arizona State this October, and Dutch had a funny line that we closed last year against a Hurley, and we'll start this year against a Hurley. Because you got Bob and Dan Hurley at UConn and Arizona State. So anyway, San Diego State on track to open November 6th against Cal State Fullerton at Viejas Arena, a game you can hear right here on San Diego Sports 760. All right, Brent, let's get to this. I understand, Aztec fans. Nobody wanted Saturday to go the way Saturday went. People are frustrated and upset. They've lost 4 straight for the first time in 15 years. That's how consistently good the Aztecs have been. But 49-10 at Air Force. The highlights, a 61-yarder we talked about earlier, and a 17-play, 80-yard drive for the Aztecs to take a 7-0 lead. But, Jim, as you said earlier, I mean, San Diego State in the second half outscored 28-0. They allowed 476 yards of total offense to Air Force, nearly 200 of those yards through the air to the Air Force Academy. And I think after a game like that, you're left to some extent scratching your head about where it went wrong for the Aztecs, who have played Air Force so well over the years. Take nothing away from the Falcons. They're 5-0. They're one of the better teams in the Mountain West. But San Diego State, other than a brief moment early, really not in it on Saturday night.
There's, for me, no sugarcoating this. This is probably the worst loss under Brady Hoke in his San Diego State second tenure. I can't think of anything that's worse than this, honestly, for a game that was this important. I mean, we were touting this as like pretty much a must win for the Aztecs on Saturday. If you had any chance of winning a conference championship.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And not only did you lose, you got your ass kicked. Brady would tell you that. The entire team would tell you that. It's unacceptable. The entire team would tell you that they are embarrassed. I'm sure Brady would tell you the same thing as well. And now you are starting to wonder, if you're an Aztec fan out there, and I'm sure there's a lot of Aztecs fans that are thinking this is like, when does it get better? Like, when are we supposed to see it getting better? Because we were supposed to see it now. I mean, you're 4 years in to your second tenure, and it's getting worse. And if you're 4 years in, like, it should be getting better. It's not getting better. And this season is on the brink. You are staring down the barrel of finishing this season without potentially going to a bowl game, unless you play lights out for the remainder of your schedule, which is gonna be difficult. It just will be. So, what's the future of the program? I don't know right now, but it's not going in the right direction as far as after Saturday goes.
Yeah, what's challenging, and yeah, I think most people agree with you. What's challenging is you got a first-year offensive coordinator in Ryan Lindley, and you've lost offensive parts that were really beneficial a year ago in Jesse Matthews and Tyrell Shavers, and it just feels as if, maybe they've had some success passing the ball, but then they can't have success on the ground, or they've had success on the ground and they don't have success through the air. And then defensively, this is very un-San Diego State-like. I mean, to be 100th in good total defense.
Yeah. There's a huge question mark going into the season. And we talked about it right before their first game against Ohio. It's like, how is the defense with losing as many players as you did? By the way, Cam Thomas for the Arizona Cardinals, like he's a stud.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've lost some huge pieces, obviously.
I know, but the job of Brady Hoke is to replace those pieces. And year 2 at Snapdragon, in the new stadium, year 4 in your second tenure with San Diego State, you did have a 12-2 season, but that's in the past now. And you have a new stadium that you need to fill. And you need to have excitement, and you need to have winning, and you're not having that right now. And if it's not, it doesn't feel like the direction of this program is heading in the right place after the last 4 games. It just doesn't.
I will say this, and I knew this would happen because I heard for a decade, I'd prefer San Diego State lost 34-31 than win 13-3. Then they lose 34-31 to Boise State. Not one person said that. Windmill Farms, the college area's natural grocer, featuring organic farm fresh produce and meats, an amazing craft beer selection, plus a full deli with award-winning sandwiches. Visit windmillfarmsmarket.com to see their weekly specials or check them out on Instacart, the sponsor of our Aztec Rewind. Aztecs off this weekend, by the way. They'll be in Honolulu to take on Hawaii next Saturday at 8 p.m.
That must be
Pacific.
nice.
Yes, for Rich and for Ted.
You think Rich is going to pull a, oh, I missed my flight, and he's like there for another week?
No, Rich over the years in Honolulu has done a lot of shows from Hawaii. He brings the equipment. He sets. It's like 3 a.m. there, and then he does the show from like 3 to 6 a.m. But if you're going to take a week, that's the week to take, right? Like the week before the San Diego State Hawaii game, or the week after.
Smart move there,
right?
That's what I would do. I'd be like, hey, I'm going to miss the flight back home, and I'll take a flight in 2 more days.
Right. I want to say this is the 3rd time they played there in the last 2 years, because they played in the Hawaii Bowl last year. They played maybe the 2nd time in the last 2 years. Did they play at Hawaii last year? No, I don't think they did.
No, I remember a year though they went to Hawaii
twice.
Yeah, Rich took full advantage of that trip.
What did he do?
I don't remember.
Just took a vacation, probably.
Which he should.
I know. Hawaii, I was in Maui last year, right?
Bring my wife, bring kids. Like, let's
Dude, if you're going to Hawaii, bring the family. That's what I did last year with San Diego
Smart
State.
Move.
Went to Maui. Okay, as you know, we've been reacting, obviously, to the news of Peter Seidler's statement earlier today, a statement that has left us kind of asking additional questions. What happens next with the Padres organization? And I don't know when we're going to know. But I do know this. This was scripted to be released at 8 a.m. And once it was released at 8 a.m., I wasn't expecting anything else the rest of the day. And that's basically being confirmed. I don't think we're getting something now at 8 p.m. That would be utterly shocking to me. They released a statement at 8 a.m. and then they make changes at 8 p.m.
Padres actually have tweeted out recently.
Okay.
Not just the...
No statements, though, right?
No statements, but the Padres. And I put this... And like, look, I'm not going to blame their social media team for this one, because this also is probably like a scheduled type of thing, right? But is it on my list of excuses? I don't see it. No, I do. We have a great minor league system. That's on my list of excuses by this Padres team.
Okay.
I'm not saying this is like fully an excuse, but it is interesting. And it's funny how they released 35 minutes ago on their social media platforms. Salas is a star on the rise because Ethan Salas won this award called the Debut of the Year Award. It's like they're just making up awards in the minors now. But Ethan Salas won the Debut of the Year Award. John, are you excited about that?
Slightly. Listen, the social media team has a job to do.
I'm not blaming them.
Yeah,
I'm not.
So you're going to get a lot of that. Of course. I mean, the Padres are in the business. Let me be clear. The Padres are in the business of promoting the Padres.
Yeah.
It's literally their job. They should market the club. They're not going to agree with us and be like, here's 5 minutes from Jon and Jim earlier where they were critical of the direction of the San Diego Padres. That's not their job. That's our job.
Yeah.
Their job is to promote. That is an excuse. Now we'll see what happens. There's going to have to be a year-end press conference. Right. And they're going to have to explain. And that's when we can talk about the excuses made. Because I agree with you there. If they start talking about Ethan Salas and Jackson Merrill there, that's a different conversation. There's got to be a press conference where you just take responsibility. Say, you know what? It didn't work. We failed. It's got to be fixed.
This was a disappointment.
Right.
This was not good enough. Things need to change. You can't remain the same. The problem is you're probably going to hear those things from like people that are,
employed and they're trying to protect themselves, and you may not hear that.
Yeah, you might also be hearing from AJ Preller.
Potentially. Yeah. Potentially. All right, Jim's back page is on the other side. Don't go anywhere. It's Jon and Jim. JD Gaucho. Thank you for the Superman. Appreciate it, guys. Who are here, please subscribe. You're San Diego sports fans. JD Gaucho, thank you for the super. We get all the supers during break. He says, always got to blame the fans and the media. After that, it's the first baseman's fault, manager's fault, owner's fault, turf, umpires. You're saying he's got to blame everyone but himself. He took a little bit of accountability, Jim, didn't he, during the season, where he's like, I'm responsible for the results of this team, but he hasn't taken a lot. Obviously, he talked to Marty like 2 weeks before the end of the season, and he wasn't in a position where he was taking a lot of blame at that point. He was saying, hey, maybe we can still get to the postseason. So I don't know if he'll play.
Reports against how his relationship with Bob Melvin's bad.
Right. So I don't know if he's going to play the blame game or not. I think he'll just play.
Do you think that we ever hear from AJ Preller again as part of the Padres organization?
Yeah, I do.
I do too.
Thank you, JD Gaucho. Really appreciate it. All right, Jim's back page. That comes your way next. Stay with us. All right, a final time on Jon and Jim today. We'll see if it's an interesting week or not for Padres fans. Will we hear from the organization this week or not, like with a press conference?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Are you excited about the postseason starting tomorrow?
Kind of. Yeah, I'm into it. I'm not overly into it. Thank you, Padres. But I'm into it.
We got tomorrow. Let's check the
4 games.
schedule.
You got all
I know.
4 games.
All 4 games. Okay.
All 4.
I'm not at the moment, but once they start tomorrow, then I'll get into it.
Yeah,
that's why I am every
I'm
year.
with you on
Like
that.
I won't be into it, but then it's like, hey, meaningful baseball on at 1 o'clock, or actually, I think they start at noon tomorrow. So
Noon.
yeah, I'll be into it once noon rolls around.
Noon all night long.
Yeah,
all day long. Brandon Woodruff out for the Brewers for that
Saw
series.
that.
That's
Big.
interesting.
Rangers Rays at noon.
Yeah.
Blue
Brewers,
Jays
Marlins
Twins at
4.
1:30. Yeah, Diamondbacks Brewers at 4.
Diamondbacks, Brewers,
And
I don't know
Marlins Phillies at 5.
How about the Rangers? They, on the last day of the season, go from the 2 seed to the 5 seed. They go from having a bye
to playing on the road
to having to go on the road to face Tampa Bay Rays. What a you're like, oh man. And by the way, if you the Padres were in the American League,
they'd be out of the postseason.
Well, I'm talking about just the gap
would be even wider.
By
the way, Miami never had to go back to New York to finish game 162.
Thank goodness. That would have been a disaster.
Yeah. for them.
Especially if the Padres won 16 in a row.
Then they would have had to go back to New York.
And they would have had to go back to New York
and hold that one.
And we'd have been talking today about, hey, did the Padres miss out or did they make it? Like, could you imagine today if the Padres actually won those 2 extra inning games? And
their only losses in their last 16 were 2 extra inning games. Were they both in extras?
Yeah.
Wow. That's ridiculous. And they still probably would have been outside. With 16 wins, all the Marlins had to do was get 3 outs.
Yep.
And the Padres would have been out.
They lost to the Cardinals in extra innings at home and then lost to the Giants in extra innings on the road. There are only 2 losses that in the last 16 games.
Crazy. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. All right, let's get to this.
All right, I'll admit, last night the Taylor Swift ball was too much. It was too much.
About time.
After the game, I mean, even Aaron was like, "This is
was way too much."
This is kind
Kristen
of ridiculous.
Said that.
This is kind of, she said it. We had one of Aaron's good friends, Claire. She was over. We watched football all day yesterday, from
shout out
the morning
Claire
to the end of the night. And even everyone were like, "This is kind of a lot."
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, it's done now, right? Can we? I was into it.
Hope.
I was totally into it.
You were so into it.
I was very into it. But
you were too into it.
Even I was like, at the end of the night, okay, guys,
like, dude,
we're done here.
Isaiah Pacheco scores a touchdown, and we're pretending like it's one of the great moments in like her life.
They went to her 17 times during the games. They had 3 Taylor Swift commercials. They also
did a hit on field about her.
They did a hit on field about her, and I think Mike Tirico ended the broadcast with a
some line
Taylor Swift line.
Yeah.
So
I like Tirico. I thought he was good last night, but I thought it was force fed from NBC, not really from not from the talent, but from like NBC.
They had.
I knew it was coming, so I didn't even turn it on.
They had Carson Daly of The Voice.
I know.
Giving like here's a rundown of everything that you should know if you're watching football for the first time tonight. Like, okay,
the goal is to score points.
Hold on, breaking news: Carson Daly's still around.
He is still around.
He's making money.
He's the host. He's the host of The Voice.
I don't watch The Voice. Last I heard, it was TRL Carson Daly.
Right.
So that's why I was like, wow, he's still employed.
He also does I believe like morning on.
Oh yeah, like Good Morning America,
Morning
or something.
America or
yeah,
something,
he does.
Oh, I don't do mornings.
Yeah,
like
no,
Jim,
that's
so
true.
I wouldn't know that either.
Jim's always up in the mornings watching.
But the point of me saying this is, with all that being said, last night's game averaged
a zillion people. Number 1, right?
27 million viewers. It's the most watched Sunday show since the Super Bowl in February.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, there it is.
So keep doing it, I guess.
I don't know, man. I'm kind of. If she goes to Minnesota this week,
oh my gosh,
you know this is really serious with them. By the way, if she goes to Minnesota,
if you're the NFL, you're hoping that they at least are together for the next 2 weeks, because on October 12th, the Chiefs play the Broncos on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, you need that,
and they need
people
that don't care about football to tune in for that game so they can get ratings on it.
True.
John, do you want to know the fastest drive-throughs as far as fast food goes in the country?
Not particularly.
I do.
The number 1 place as far as fastest and an average of total time, which, I mean, in seconds here it shows.
Taco Bell.
What's the time first?
The time? What do you mean?
Like, how long does it take?
Like, what's the average? What's the fastest time?
He doesn't have that.
Oh,
it's only in seconds. So,
tell us how many seconds. We can do the math.
278 seconds.
So that's over 4 minutes. That's 4:38.
Well, it's not Taco Bell. It's not In-N-Out.
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A's fast, kind of. No, I'd say Jack in the Box.
You're both wrong. You should have went with your gut. It's Taco Bell.
Taco Bell. Yeah, Taco Bell.
Taco Bell is the fastest drive-through.
Interesting.
In the country, followed.
Not the one over here.
That is true.
There's a lot of them, though.
Followed by Carl's
I think
Jr.
I could walk to Mexico and make tacos quicker than they do.
Followed by Carl's Jr., then KFC. All right. And then we got Arby's And then we have Dunkin' Donut. That's still a drive-through.
Oh, I never even would have thought of that. You think Dunkin' would be fast? It's not like they have to make the donut before they give
True.
it to you.
Hardee's. And the slowest time is Chick-fil-A at 436 seconds.
That's like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. If you missed anything today, sportssd.com, iHeartRadio app, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, or YouTube. You can search for Jon and Jim 760. Find us on social at Jon and Jim. We're back tomorrow at 3. I think I'm going to Vegas right now for the night. For Brent and Jim, I'm Jon. Keep it here. It's San Diego Sports 760.
Okay.
Okay.